the other thing the other giveaway was you weren't breaking a sweat. Yeah, I just did 100 push-ups. I'm not
I,
glistening. You see me glisten?
I,
No.
I got to the point where I was glistening. I did push myself. I didn't just
Yeah, but that's after you quit sandbagging and got to your potential.
Yeah, yes. And he would literally have a short run for us would be like 6 miles. And I used to love running until the DEA Academy. And after that, I hated running because he would literally think, okay, so we would run maybe 5 miles. He'd bring us back to the track. And when you hit the track is like, we're done. He would have us run the track and we're sprinting in because we're like, this is the end of the run. And then he'd take us back out again. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I just gave my all on the sprint in and we're going back out. So when I realized he was playing that type of game, I just stayed at one pace. I can't kick in until I know that it's the last of the last.
No, I was going to say, did you ever watch the series on HBO called Band of Brothers?
Uh-uh.
Oh, you got to watch it. It's about training up for World War II. I mean, D-Day and this one when they're training through the paratroopers back then, what they called them, they had this hill called Currahee.
Okay.
And it's the same thing. They had this Captain Sobel, Lieutenant Sobel at the time, just a real ass. Almost, this is the exact thing. You get done and hey guys, eat. And everybody's chowing down. They finally get to eat. He says, oh, everybody, dress in your PT kill. We're doing Currahee. So you got all these guys thrown up because they just had a huge meal, screwing with their heads. You got to, if you ever get the chance, watch that. You will appreciate the minute they go to Currahee. That's exactly what they did to you. Oh, we're done. No, let's go back out.
Yeah. Well, it was the whole class, but I was just like, okay. So at that point, I'm like, I have to stay here. You're not going to get a kick in because it's just going to be like right here, just in case we're going back out. Because literally, I almost died the first time he did that. I was like, I just gave everything that was in my tank for the kick in because you want to finish strong, like the ribbon, you like it. But yeah, when he did that, I was like, oh no, I can never do that. I'm just going to stay right here at this pace. And I was never at the end. I was always at the front or middle, but it never seemed good enough. It was crazy. And so I dealt with that. And then for our defensive tactics test, we're usually, when we're doing our exams and stuff, we're going like 50% you don't want to go more than that. And typically they'll pair you up with someone that's equal height, weight type of scenario. Well, when we took our defensive tactics test.
You got the football player, didn't you?
I did. And let me tell you, there was many times when I was going through that academy, I was dazed, literally dazed. I would get hit. And I think it was some intentional hitting, but that's okay. Because I said in my mind, that's okay. Because if I get hit in the field, I'll know how to take it. And I know I can work through it and still give commands or whatever. But I would literally just be like, the room would be spinning and I'm still like giving commands and handcuffing and doing what I need to do. I think it prepared me, literally. So for when we took the exam, they put me with the biggest, craziest guy in class. And I tell you, he was going 100% on that bag. And he ended up jamming my wrist. I thought it was broke. So they had to take me to the medical center and it was sprung. So I didn't even get to finish my test. So that freaked me out because I'm like, okay, so when am I going to be able to finish my test now that my hand is sprung? So when I got cleared, and like I say, I thought my instructor for my defensive tactics instructor had issues with me, and he was going to be the one that was going to be evaluating me. That brought me all kinds of fear because basically whatever he evaluates is what he evaluates. And I had never, like I say, received any negative feedback from the other instructors as far as my handcuffing and all the drills that we have to do to pass the test.
And unlike college, you can't go back in and say, what do I have to do to get an A? Whatever he gives you, that's what you get, right?
Exactly. So, but by the grace, a different instructor actually scored me because I had to go back separately and finish the test.
Did you ever think you were getting some divine intervention here with like that firearms instructor and the PT instructor?
Morgan, let me tell you. So there was a girl in class 133, and I'm going to say her name because I love her to death, and she was my ride or die. Karen DeRoe. So she was a black female that was in the class ahead of me, and she was the only
quiet young lady.
Yeah, right.
Never speaks her mind.
Did she hug you?
Oh, big time. It's like a bear hug.
She hugs everybody. I'm like, Karen, you can't just be hugging the bosses. But we would literally spend hours talking on the stairwell in between the dorm floors and praying, and literally praying. And when she left and when she graduated, it was hard for me because I had no one else.
How
But
far
that
ahead of you was she in the academy? Like 4 weeks or 8 weeks or?
they were like a month ahead. So because when she left, I still had a month to go. So she wasn't there when I had to do my final qualifications and stuff like that. So fast forward, nothing. I passed my defensive tactics test. I passed everything. The night before we have our final FATS efforts train our test, which I didn't even know it was a test because nobody else shoots for their job on a FATS machine. And I don't know the acronym for what FATS means.
Firearms Training System.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and just explain that to the listeners, if you would, a little bit.
So it's like a video game that takes you through scenarios, no shoot scenarios. And if you shoot or don't shoot, you explain your actions. And that's the purpose of it, to kind of have like real life, because it's people like with guns, without guns, reacting, and you have to react to like you would be reacting to a citizen.
And they've obviously that's improved a lot, but they had FATS and then they came out with FATS 2. And the original FATS, if you shot, that was the end of the scenario, right? But FATS 2 had branching. So you would shoot, and based upon whether you should have shot or you missed, then it would branch to the follow-on. Like if you shot the bad guy or you whatever, it's like then it would branch and show him falling down, but you missed the other bad guy because you had tunnel vision. Or if you missed, then the branching would be they shoot at you and like, okay, now you're dead. So it was really cool. It started getting almost lifelike. Like you say, it's like a real life video game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the counselors bring me in the day before we have that. And they bring me and a Hispanic guy in, well, separately, but we're the only two in our whole class that gets this conversation. And basically they tell me that I'm going to shoot for my job tomorrow on the FATS. I'm like, excuse me? Like, what does that mean? I was like, I hadn't got any negative feedback. Why am I shooting for my job on the FATS when I passed qualifications on the range? And they were like, well, we don't know what to tell you, but we were told to let you know, be ready for tomorrow. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I go to one of my classmates and I'm just like crying. I'm like, they don't want me to be an agent. They don't want me here. And he was like, so? He's like, Rogeana, I need you not to drop another tier in this academy. You're on the home stretch. Do not let them get you off your game. And so I sucked it up and I was just like, okay. So when I go to take the FATS is in a little trailer, first of all. And the room that the FATS machine in is even smaller. So when they call my name, it's like 5 guys in suits going to this little room with me, talking about intimidation.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about the weapon too, because it's not your regular weapon. It's not
it's
same weapon.
a fake gun. It's a part of like
It's almost like
part of
a
the video game.
pistol. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I go into the room. These 5 gentlemen trail into this little bitty room with me, and I shoot the target, explain why I shot. The Bay instructors high-five me. Good job, Patterson. And I turn and look to these guys. They're like, okay, good. But you can tell it's that good that she passed. Oh, gosh, now what are we going to do, right? So it's all fine. The same for the other gentleman that had to go in as well. He goes in after me. And then we get to the last evaluation for the academies. You're closing out stuff, the folder that's going to go to your office. And my counselor, who has been like, he was in my corner. He was like, Rogeana, he was one of the ones telling me it's going to stay the course. It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. He gives me an evaluation. He can't even look at me. Like, he can't make eye contact with me. And I start to read it. And this is still in my head because it was so poignant. It said in there that it was not obvious that Patterson had prior law enforcement experience, was the statement that's written in here. And I'm like, I said, this doesn't make any sense. I was like, why is that in there? And he was like, Rogeana, just sign it. I was like, no, I'm not going to sign it because it doesn't make any sense. Anybody that reads my other evaluations and then gets to this one is like, why is she graduating? Why wasn't anything addressed before now? And he was like, Rogeana, I just need you to sign it. I was like, but this isn't right. And like I say, he couldn't even look at me. So I knew it wasn't him, but someone else, because he's just a 13. You know, the counselors are 13s. And so I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. And he was like, well, just go ahead and sign it because that's what's going to go to your next duty station. And I was like, okay. I said, I'll sign it, but I'll get copies of my other evaluations to take with me. And so I signed it. And I went to my class coordinator and I said, I would like to get copies of my evaluations because we have the right to get those. And he was like, okay, let me check with upstairs to see how I can get that for you. So for the last however many weeks before we graduated, I'm asking him, how do I get my records? How do I get my records? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, you just crippled me with my boss. If this is the only sheet he's going to get, he's not going to get all the other evaluations that say Patterson was doing this and she was good in this and she did this to help her class. You're not getting that. You're just getting, it was not evident that she had prior law enforcement.
And you're using a term, so we want to tell people, you're saying Bat Patterson, that's basic agent trainee, right? So it's not like you're Batwoman or Batman, right? It's like,
I think she was.
She was, yeah.
Yeah. So like I say, I go all the way through the academy and I'm asking the day before graduation, my mom's there, my dad's there, family came in to go to let me back up before I even get to graduation. So for the pinning ceremony, if you have a family member that's prior law enforcement, they can pin your badge.
Like your uncle or somebody?
Yeah. And at that point, they had no stipulations on they had to be this ranking or that ranking. It was just prior law enforcement. They could pin your badge. So I sent a request for my uncle to pin my badge. They send me back saying, your uncle can't pin your badge unless he's like an executive level at the police department. Okay, very good.
I thought deputy chief was executive level.
I didn't put what his title was. I just said he was Dallas PD because there was no requirement for that beforehand. So I politely wrote back, he's the deputy chief of police for Fort Worth Police Department. Can he pin my badge? And they were like, oh, okay, that's okay. Then he can do it.
Wow.
You see my face, Steve, right? I'm just like, I was baffled.
Do you get the feeling that if you'd put deputy chief, they said we can only allow him to pin you if he's a chief? I mean, they would have always done something to like one up it, right?
Exactly. But once they put it out there that he just had to be executive level, it's done. You can't change it from there because they didn't know his role in the police department.
If I can interrupt you just a second, I just want to. You and I had this conversation on the phone, and I want to just point out a couple of things. One is, this is the first time. Okay, when people go through FATS, it's judgmental shooting, and it's a pass-fail. And what they're looking for is, if you pulled that trigger, why did you? Were you justified in pulling the trigger? Because you may encounter that on the street, and they're trying to get you to
be able to articulate it. Yep.
Right. And like you say, if you screw it up, you'll get remedial training. Did you get remedial FATS training?
I never had any bad feedback from remedial at all. That's why I'm like, how am I shooting? And I never had any issue with FATS that was brought to my attention.
And I have never heard of shooting FATS. I'm a former firearms instructor for DEA for years and years and years. I've never heard of shooting for your job on the FATS machine. Now, I can understand as you're going through training where they're saying you exhibit poor judgment, and if you do that continually, I can see where there's going to be a problem. But you never had that.
And my Bay instructor was like high-fiving me. He was like, all good. She's good. I'm like, he was probably annoyed that the suits were in the room too, because it's like, are y'all really doing this? Is this really happening?
I got to go ahead, Steve. I'm frustrated. How the hell could they get away with this? I mean, it's not like it's non-obvious. It's not like it's under the radar. This is obvious. 5 suits, and they're bringing you into a FATS trailer. How the hell do they get away with that?
They run the academy.
They run the academy.
It's not right. It's horrible. And I was looking for, this is very reminiscent of another lady we had on here, and her name is escaping me right now, that was former CIA and then FBI.
Yeah, we were talking about, there was a previous episode. You found it, Murph.
Yeah, Tracy Walder was an officer, an operative in the field with the CIA, and then got a little disgruntled there and joined the FBI and got treated in the academy like dog shit, just to be real honest. I mean, she was a
case officer with CIA working overseas, working terrorism.
And her instructors in the academy, just like your instructors, for whatever reason, took a dislike to her. Maybe they didn't want a female in there. Who knows? But tried to get her washed out. Then when she gets out to the field, she's a shining star, does excellent. She decided once, she realized it was going to continue in the field, she decided to resign and go do something she likes to do, which is teaching school now. And she's a Texas girl, by the way. And here's the funny thing. The guy that tried to screw over her the whole time she was in the academy once she got in the field and proved herself, he was the first guy to call her and say, please don't leave the FBI. We need you. But I mean, what a bunch of shit. It's ridiculous. It really ticks you off.
Well, and she ended up working a very significant espionage case involving some Chinese, basically, plants, for years and stuff. So it was good stuff. So let's circle back, because the thing is, we try and put, we don't have enough women on the podcast. We do a lot to get them, but we had Sherry Oz.
Yes,
Sherry.
we worked together in LA.
Oh yeah, and Sherry's a hoot. Let me.
Oh yeah, Sherry. No, she don't hold back. Yeah, I sent her a picture recently. Well, before I retired, I sent her a picture of us when we had abs. We were doing some undercover at a rave, and I had like this half shirt on, and she had like this little cute outfit. I was like, "You remember those days?"
Wait, hey, did she retire?
No, she's still
she's still there. I just saw her talking about fentanyl and some other stuff, down there in Arizona. They just did a podcast or an interview with her about that. So
good. She needs to stay on the job too. And, Rogeana probably should have stayed on the job, but, she won't listen to me. What can I say?
And I'll tell you why, some of the reasons I left as we go on. So,
Well, let's talk about those. So let's talk about finally closing out the academy and getting to your first post, which is LA. So, I mean, how did the graduation go? Was your uncle allowed to come in? How did things go?
Yes, well, he was able to come in and pin me. So the night before, I'm in the hotel room, and I'm with my mom and my two sisters, and my mom can clearly tell that I'm not happy, something's wrong, and she asked me, what's going on? And I said, I don't think I'm gonna continue on. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, I think I'm not gonna go to the graduation. I'm done with this. And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, it is so clear that they don't want me to be an agent. And I tell her the story about the evaluation and, and the things that I discovered about my firearm. And I just say, they don't want me to be here. And she says, baby girl, she says, there are going to be a lot of places that don't want you. But that doesn't mean you don't go in there and kick down a door and show them what you're made of. She said, I thought this is what you wanted. And I said, I do, but it's obvious that they don't want me. And she says, don't let anybody take away what you want to do. And I told her, I said, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to go to the academy and I'm going to let them give me the badge and I'm going to throw it back at them and say, you guys don't deserve me, and walk off the stage. And my mom said, well, that'll be very dramatic, but is this what you want or is it not? And I said, I want it, but and she was like, just do it. Just show them who you are. Show them that you will be a good agent and show them what you're capable. And from that point on, I was just like, okay. So the night before was not, because I was like, I had already called Dallas PD. Can I come back? They were like, sure. We didn't want to lose you in the first place. So, yeah.
I was going to say, what'd you do the next day?
So next day I went to the academy, to the graduation, and got my badge and my gun and my shield and headed off to LA. My first assignment. And I direct reported. So again, overachiever, didn't even go back to Dallas, never even stepped foot in the Dallas office as an agent. Went directly to LA.
So tell everybody about that, because that was the thing we've heard other agents talk about, because normally when you get out of the academy, you stay where you live for a while, right, to get acclimated. But you were why were you allowed to go to LA directly? Now, did you ask for LA, or how did you end up in LA too?
Oh, well, LA, my mom was in LA, oddly enough. She was in LA, and my class, because they give us a list of the assignments. And so we as a class decide who's going to go where or who we want to go where. And I was actually looking at Las Vegas, but there was a guy in my class who had like 5 kids, and he wanted to go to Las Vegas because he had family support there. And I was like, if I put Las Vegas down, I will probably get it. Because at that point they didn't have any minority females to my knowledge. And so I knew I would probably get it. And I was like, well, I won't put that as my first choice so that he could get it. And he actually ended up getting it.
So you guys were allowed to negotiate as a class for your...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, we did.
We weren't. We got to commit the wish list, and then you might get something.
Yeah, we were able, and then we still did a list of 3. So everybody had to list 3 places they wanted to go in the order of preference. And so I talked to my mom, and my mom was like, yeah, you can come live with me, because I was like, there's no way on your first starting out, because I came in as a GS7. which that was a whole nother issue. I should have been a 9, but it's neither here or there. I made up for it on the back end. But so my mom was like, come live with me, until you get yourself together, and then you can do whatever you want to do. So I got LA, went to LA. Like I say, I was nervous because of that evaluation. So my very first day, I go into the office and I meet with my my supervisor, and I tell him, he gives me the spiel about his expectations in the office, and I'm all good with everything he's saying. And I tell him, I say, sir, all I ask is that you evaluate me on what I do for you from this day forward, not on what you've heard, because you've probably heard some stuff about me. But I ask you to evaluate me from this day forward. And he was like, cool, no problem. And I had
what was his name?
Mike Quinn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike and I worked together in
Quinn.
special operations later on.
Yeah, he was a good supervisor. Yeah, he was good. He kind of I think I used to make him crazy because I would do stuff. I was very, how do I say?
You were the person on the radio at 2:00 in the morning, not letting other guys grab their sleep, right? Like in Dallas.
Exactly. And because I was confident in pretending to be other people, that I would literally, like I said when I was talking earlier, and I said sometimes I would be a real estate agent, because I knew real estate agents, normal for them to be in front of people's houses taking pictures or whatever. And so I would literally pull up in front of the bad guy's house, get out with my Polaroid, and start taking pictures, of the location.
Did you ever get challenged?
No. I would get little kids telling me who's in the house. Oh, thank you very much. Why are you looking at my friend's house? And I'd be like, oh, I'm a real estate agent. Who's your friend? They tell me everybody that's in the house.
And then you follow up with the question, now, do you know anybody who's looking to put their home on the market?
No, I wouldn't tell that. But if they were asked who was that you're talking to, they would, it made sense. Because I never went out looking like law enforcement. I went out looking like a normal female would look in the settings. And so I was able to get out and jump out anywhere I needed to. And if we were going to do a raid, my stuff was in the back. I just switch out. So I wore my dresses, I wore my heels.
I could just see a raid going on with you in a dress. You got to take off your heels, you put on a vest, and there you are in a dress.
Not in a dress, but I did have a scenario where I forgot my boots, my combat boots, and we had to go hit a house. And so I had these high heel leather boots on, right? With my fatigues, because that's all I had. Hey, you got to make it work. So that's all I had. And so it was funny because we get out and we're briefing the case, and we have 2 black and whites that come on the scene, because when we're going to hit a house, we usually have black and white for police presence. And so these 2 squad cars pull up, and the guys get out, and they're looking at me like, what is up with this girl in these high heel black boots? So they put me on perimeter, and it's so funny because it's like second nature. I didn't even think about it, because the bad guy, one of the targets, run out the back, and I see him. So I jump the fence in my high heel boots and get him down. And the one of the officers is with me on perimeter and with our team on perimeter. So he's seeing all of this, and I get him down and I call clear, blah, blah, blah. Take him, get him to the front, get him out. And when we go back to the debrief location, he's like, man, you were like Superwoman. He's like, you jumped that fence in those heels. Because he said when I first pulled up, I was like, what is she doing in those boots? What is her problem? Like, what is she doing? But he said, when I saw you go over that fence, I was like, go, girl.
You just got to say, guys, I make it look good. That's why I got the heels. By the way, did you notice my makeup, my Mary Kay?
Yep.
But they did notice she had a brick in her hand.
I love how y'all take these things. Listen, but that wasn't the norm, but I made it work. And it was so funny because I normally would wear high heels. I tried, when I first got out of the academy, I tried to do the big shirt with the gun on your hip, with the t-shirt and the tennis shoes. And I was just like, it was just too awkward for me because that's not how I normally would dress. And it also, I have flat feet. Full stop. I have flat feet. For me, flat feet hurt in flat shoes. So I stay in heels because that's more comfortable for me. So I didn't really, I had 2 pair of tennis shoes, which are the 2 pair of tennis shoes I used in the academy. That's it. And my boots, which I left. So that day I just improvised. But the guys used to give me so much grief. They was like, you can't really run in those heels, can you? I don't tell you how many races I had in the parking garage at LA Field Division, racing these guys in my heels. So finally they were like, okay, she can run in the heels. We're going to leave her alone, But it getting there, and after I had that initial interaction with my supervisor, every bit of being in LA was lovely. I mean, I really loved the work. I loved my group. I loved the support that I got.
How did he treat your evaluations from the academy and stuff? Did he finally just throw those in the shit can and say, yeah, whatever?
I don't know what he did with those, but it didn't make any difference because, like I say, he was fair in looking at what I did from there. And plus, I was on a mission because when I came out, remember, they told me I was not going to be a good agent. So I came out ready to prove. I would literally work almost 24 hours a day as an agent when I first started. My first 3 years is a blur because I was just humping. And my within 3 months of coming out of the academy, I had my first Title III wiretap that I wanted to do. And I took it to my boss, and so I can tell the public what that is. That's when you go take an affidavit to a judge in order to listen to someone's phone. Legally listen to someone's phone, which we do. We don't just start listening to people's phones. We have to get permission from a judge. It goes to the attorney general. All these people have to sign off on it. And so
you're skipping over something too. You're only on the job for 3 months. Normally, if you're writing Title IIIs, how long are you on the job?
Years.
Yeah, senior age.
Overachiever again. I'm on 3 months writing a Title III, losers.
But I was literally, once I got the lead about this case, I was engrossed in it. I was like, I was single. I'm in LA. I'm like, let me just put all the numbers together. I had a good intel analyst who kind of I said, no, show me what you're doing so I don't have to harass you. So I knew how to run my numbers. I could do an address check. I could put trash pools. I could do all these things to get the information that I needed. And to do a Title III, you have to clear what's the necessity. That means you have to clear all these things to say, I can't go any further. This is what I need to go further in my investigation.
Title III is a tool of last resort. In other words, if nothing else, it has to be the final thing.
Exactly. And so I went to my boss and I had my little folder with all my notes and step-by-step of the things that I did when I did them. And I said, I feel like the next step for me is a Title III. I can't get any more information without a Title III. And he was like, well, Rogeana, we have agents that are trying to get their 13. You need to give that to them because you're a 7. You have a long way to go before you need this type of investigation on your record to be able to move up. And I was like, but I did all the work on it. I worked it up. Why do I have to give it to someone else? I was like, if I don't do it, I don't learn how to do it. And because I had what we called back then the wiretap guru as my training officer or my training agent, I was like a sponge with him. Everything this man did, I was like, okay, why are you doing that? And I loved his training style because his training style was, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I want you to just do it. And then once you do it, we're going to come back and talk about why you chose that way to do it, which I loved it because it caused me I learned the manual. I learned the processes. I learned everything. And then he would just refine whatever I did so, okay, that's good that you thought to do it that way, but this is the way you can also do it. But he never told me how to do it initially. He was like, let me see how you're going to do it. And then we'll talk about best ways to do it, So
give him a shout out also.
George Elliott, love you. So
he was a T3 guru for the LA Field Division.
Yes, he was so patient. And so and so I'm in the office, and the boss finally says, "Okay, you can do it."
Hey, tell us too, just quick context. What kind of case was it? What were you after? What were you targeting?
It was black tar heroin case. Mexicans out of Mexico dealing black tar heroin.
Is that where they come from? Mexicans come out of Mexico? I didn't know that.
You can
It's like,
slap him later.
Okay,
it's like
okay,
driving
let me
down
just
to the
tell you.
academy from
No,
Dallas.
okay, let me just tell you something. There's Chinese in Mexico that are some drug traffickers. There's a lot of other people in these countries. So I do need to specify that that's what it was. The
Just as
type of
long as you're not
organization.
driving down to the academy from Dallas. Yes.
That's right. Cooper Wright, you just learned something right there.
Yes.
I stand corrected. Continue on.
So he gives me the go ahead and work on the affidavit. It literally takes me a month to write the affidavit, going back and forth with George. Okay, put this in. No, you don't need that. And finally, I got it to a place where I could take it. First, I had to go through the SAC, which was Michelle Linhart at the time. So she
No
reviewed it.
kidding.
All the ASACs reviewed it. It goes to the United States Attorney's Office, or the AUSA that's on the case, to review it. Goes to the Attorney General, then it goes to our Office of, what is it called? OEO stands for, I can't remember
Office
anymore.
Enforcement Operations.
Yes, goes to them, they approve it. Then we get to before a judge, and a judge approves it, and it comes back, and I get to turn the switch on. And from there, every other part of my career is from that wiretap.
What do you mean by that?
Because it's like a web that is created. Once you get on the right phone and your target is a bona fide boss, he's talking to all the other people that need to be taken down. And that's how it was like a spider web. It just kept
you
blowing up.
were lucky enough to get the center of the spider web, right? Is what you were saying.
Yeah.
You do all these spin-off wires, and it just keeps going and going.
Exactly. So
tell us about the case. So how long did you run the Title III? What was the outcome?
Well, I ran that particular one. I want to say, because you get 30 days. I believe it was 30 days on the wiretap.
And then if you don't, then you can extend it, right?
And then you can extend it. But like I say, the target I originally went up on, he was like kind of middle man. So I just kept going up and up and up and up. Until we actually got it to a place, because my GS did assign a senior agent to work with me on it. And then, because I was also still on training, so I had George and I had a senior agent that were supporting me in, making sure I was doing everything right. Because and I'll tell you this, I almost got caught in a trick bag from another agent, a senior agent who
Say
came
that again.
to me.
You almost got caught in a what?
A trick bag.
What does that
mean? A trick bag. In trouble.
Okay.
Because, when you start doing Title IIIs, it's very strict. You can't just do any old thing with your Title III or a pen register or anything like that. And so I had a senior agent come to me and say, Regina, can you check my number against your Title III? Okay.
You mean his personal number or what?
No, he gave me that's just a random phone number. I didn't, a random phone number. And I was like, okay. But I'm thinking he's a senior agent. He knows what, he's asking me, so I must be able to do that. And as I was sitting there, George overheard this conversation. He says, Regina, before you run that number, read your order and what your order says you can do and how you can pull phones or look at phones based on your affidavit. And I read it, and it says, only numbers that you can basically look at are numbers that are on your register, i.e. I can't take another number from someone else and compare it to, if I didn't pull that number off of my pen register, I can't combine the two. Understand what I'm saying? So this agent almost got me in trouble, because if I would have ran that number against my Title III, that would have been in violation of the order.
Now, was that did he not know, or did he think that you could do it, or was it a setup?
I don't know, but I'm so glad George was there to hear it.
Well, and all he had to do was call a staff coordinator in Special Operations Division, and they would have run that number for him, and then they could have made whatever connections he's looking for.
Exactly.
Maybe he didn't like SOD. Maybe
I don't know, but SOD became my best friend. I think they had me on speed dial, because once they knew that if they sent me something, I would work it up. I would turn over every crack and cranny to see if it produced. And yeah, that case just kind of went crazy. And then, like I say, once SOD knew I was in LA and I was a worker, they started sending me stuff, and they basically equipped me with the targets to actually get my Impact 13. And an Impact 13 is where you get you get promoted to a 13 level before you're eligible to get it based on your casework. And so I
Means you're
actually,
kicking ass and taking names.
I actually had 3 investigations, and you only need 2. And I wrote them all up and got it done. So within 4 years, I was, I got my 13.
Wait a minute. You go from a GS7 to a GS13 in 4 years.
Yes.
Yep.
How is that not being an overachiever?
I didn't say I wasn't being an overachiever. I never denied that.
That was a trick question.
But I was trying to prove that I was going to be a good agent. That I was a good agent. That was
On an average track, if you're a good agent just doing good work, how long would it have taken you to hit a 13?
just if you don't apply for the impact.
Yeah.
And come in as a 7.
Yeah.
That would probably take you 5.
Yeah, 5 or 6 years, I think.
5 or 6 years.
And
I
you
think
get
it's
it
more
in 4.
exclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about after that first 90 days. Once you got through that first 90 days, you got that Title III. At what point did the academy and your experience there not become irrelevant, but it's kind of like, you know what? I'm glad I went through the ceremony. That's all behind me now. When did you finally put the academy stuff behind you?
After I sat in the office with my boss, I said, as long as he's willing to give me a fair shot, I'm going to give him 100%.
Well, you gave him more than 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and Mike
like I say,
he's not excitable. He was, we actually called him the curmudgeon. Because
I did get him a laugh a couple of times though. So.
Yeah, he's straight faced almost all the time. Nothing excited him. So that's fantastic to hear that. And
we had, like I say, my group was made up of some good agents. We had Nick Brooks. I don't know if you know Nick Brooks.
I do. Yeah.
He was the backup, and it was so funny because every time Mike would go on leave, we were doing tons of search warrants. Yeah. Because he was like, "Okay, now we can go out." I was like, "Okay, it's cool. Let's go kick some doors in." Yeah. So
kick some doors in high-heeled boots. Let me show you boys how it's done.
You gotta love that.
Look good.
Get your bricks. We're going on the street.
That was only the one time I had the high heels on. Otherwise, I had my tack boots on.
That's a great story.
So let's talk about, normally we kind of dive into some cases. We want to talk about a couple things with you, but what's so impressive about your story is everything that you overcame, how you accelerated your career, and how you got. So let's talk about that, moving up the chain, moving up to, like you said, you got your Impact 13. So now you're a GS13, right? So GS13 kind of let everybody know in the hierarchy, that's your first supervisory role.
Well, it's your potential to be a backup, I should say.
Okay.
Even though the supervisor can pick whoever they want to be a backup, but typically GS13s are backups for groups, are training. They're assisting with basically helping the develop younger agents.
Yeah, it's like a journeyman role. When you're there, that's as high as you're going to go unless you take management.
So let's talk about that. So how long were you in LA?
I was in LA for 6 years.
What made you decide to leave?
I started to collect mentors, and that's just to be honest. People, would call me, or I would call them, and just say, "How do I do this? How do I do that?" And people started to say, "Okay, we see a leader in her," and they would literally say, "Okay, when are you going to take the SAP?" And I was like, "The SAP?
What's that?"
That's the test you have to take to get promoted. It stands for
promotion test, I think, isn't it?
Thank you. That sounded right.
I just made that shit up.
But it's basically a test you have to take to get promoted. You have to take it at a 14 level and a 15 level. And it consists of written exams, scenarios that you go through to show that you're capable of running a group.
This is and just so you know, this isn't you don't sit down at your desk and take a test. You go into Washington, D.C., and you have senior management personnel there that are doing the test. So you're in a room with two. So if you're 13 going for your 14, you're going to be sitting in a room with two GS15s. And they have scenarios. You get to read the scenario. You come up with your solution. Then you come back in and present it to them, and they grill you. Well, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Why didn't you do this part? And you have to be able to justify everything along the way. And it doesn't last for one session. That's like 3 days.
Oh, no. Yeah. I literally had to take a nap when it was done. I was like, I felt so drained.
It's pretty grueling.
And I was actually at that point, I was in Barbados at the time. So
wait a minute, how'd you get to Barbados?
Yes, once I became a 13, you can get foreign. I mean, there are some people that do it as 12s, but you have to be the blessed child to be able to do that. But so I waited till I was got my 13, and one of my mentors called me and said, "Hey, there's a position going to be open in Barbados." Because I actually wanted to go to Panama, and I put in for Panama. But when I put in for Panama, my Impact 13 packet was still at headquarters. It had been approved locally, but it was at headquarters. And the country attaché called me and said, "Regina, your resume looks really good." He says, "But there's no way I could select you when I have all these 13s that applied." He was like, "But, keep Panama in mind in the future. And when you get your 13, reach back out if we have a position." And so I said, fine. And like I said, one of my mentors called me and said, "Is there a position going to be coming open in Barbados? Would you be interested?" I didn't know nothing about Barbados. I didn't know where Barbados was. I was just like, okay, I'll consider that. Got off the phone, went and found, I'm finna date us, an atlas, because we didn't have the Google Maps and all that back then. So I got an atlas, and I found Barbados, a little bitty dot of an island on a map. And I was like, okay, we did have the internet then. So I went into the internet computer and I Googled Barbados, and I'm like, okay, it's not a third world country. It's a little island. I could do a little island. And so I applied, and the CA called me, the country attaché called me and interviewed me, and the rest was history.
So
who was the CA at that time?
I don't want to say who the CA was, because I'm going to tell you another story about that same CA.
Oh, okay. Got
All right. So before you get to that CA, why did you pick Panama though the first time? What was it about Panama that said, "I want this I want to go here"?
Because first of all, I wanted to learn Spanish, and I wanted DEA to give me language school. So that was the reason, Panama. And it was a beautiful place. I knew about Panama. I didn't know anything really about any other place. And so I was like, that'll be cool. I can go there. I can work big time cases, from money laundering to regular international drug cases. I just thought it would be great. And DEA is going to teach me Spanish on their dime.
There you go.
So, yeah.
So you're in Barbados now. So what's it like? You land, and now, did you get a chance to visit before you were assigned, or was the first time you landed in Barbados? You're going to work. I'm
going to work, which is so funny, because the guys in the office, I was going to be the only female agent there. So the guys in the office started this. They were basically playing a prank on me. So one of the agents called me, because I was replacing. They worked it out where. Well, actually, from the time I got selected, it was a year before I actually reported, because I got selected in 2004, but I didn't go until 2005.
And how big is the office? How many people?
There were 5 agents, an administrative assistant, an office assistant, and the country attaché. That was our office. Oh, and then we had a TAT, which is like an intel guy from the military side.
Any analysts?
The TAT, that was our analyst.
Okay.
We had a military analyst, and that was the office. And so one of the guys called me. The guy I was replacing was Tim Tobert. And one of
my best friends. I didn't know that.
Tim was, oh my gosh, Tim is so awesome.
I love that guy. He was, you know what, and not to interrupt your story, but that's just how much I respect the guy. I made him my backup when he was a GS-12.
That's what
I trust that guy with my life. And Morgan, he's a former Alabama State Trooper, except he was a real trooper.
Damn right, you trust troopers.
Yes, he was. I'm going to share about him. So they decided to play a trick on me, because, like I said, I don't really know a lot about Barbados. But they called me. One of the other guys, James Wheats, calls me and says, "Regina, there's a problem." Because I'm literally calling these guys every week. When am I going to come to the country? When am I coming? When am I coming? They were probably getting annoyed with me. And so he says, "There's a problem." He said Tim was out running and he got bit by a bat and he's in the hospital. I'm like, "What do you mean he got bit by a bat? And there's bats in Barbados?" And I'm like, they were like, "Yeah, there's bats. You got to watch out, because, you can't just be running. You have to make sure you have right repellent on and the right clothes, because they'll just fly all around you and stuff." And I'm just like, I'm not really feeling bats. Like, what the heck is going on? And I'm like trying to research it. I don't find anything about bats, but he is so convincing, this thing happened. And I'm just like, so I called some other people, and they was like, "Yeah, he's not doing well we're just keep him in prayer. We hope he makes it. And I'm like, are y'all serious right now? I mean, and this like goes on for weeks. And then finally they tell me that's not the case. I was just like, oh my God. Cause I was like, I don't think I want to go to Barbados, you know? I'm about to, can I pull my papers back, please?
Hey, but you know what that demonstrates right there? You had a good group of guys, because you know what? If they didn't consider you to be one of them, they wouldn't have pulled this joke on you. They wouldn't have pulled this prank on you.
Right.
And that's what I said. You get to a certain point, it's kind of like, because the question I wanted to ask is, when did you finally feel that kind of acceptance is like, hey, people are accepting me for the work that I do, and not just because I'm a particular color or a particular gender? When did they start accepting me as an agent?
Well, I think that kind of happened in LA, because like I say, I hit the ground running, and the guys, it's like any other thing. Once you prove yourself, they're like, okay, she's good. She got our back. She can shoot. She can get in the door with us. She knows how to do investigations.
Anybody who can run down a suspect in high heels is always going to be my backup.
Climbing the fence was the thing. Oh yeah, a chain link fence. That's at that. But yeah, in LA, we developed camaraderie. I mean, it was just we had a really good group. And I felt the support of those guys, and they felt like if they called, no matter what time of day we got to roll out, Rogeana was rolling out. The only I still rolled out, but I had to include my I had two little girls because I don't have kids that I kind of adopted. And we would do stuff on the weekends when I didn't have to work. And one weekend they called me, and we had to do some surveillance. And I was like, where is the surveillance? Because right now I have two little girls with me that I have to get to two separate homes before I can come and meet you guys where you at. And it's like, oh, we're in the area that you're at. And I was like, okay. So I say, okay, we can do this. I'm just going to incorporate them into the surveillance.
This sounds like a Derek Maltz episode.
It is a Derek. So when you said that, I thought about it. And so basically I told them, I said, you guys know what I do, right? And they were like, yeah. So I said, I'm going to need your help. I'm going to go get the car, but I'm going to need you guys to stand on because where we were like within eye shy of where this deal was supposed to be happening. It was like, it couldn't have been better. So I said, you guys stand on the corner. I said, this is the person you're going to be looking for. I said, I'm going to go get the car. So when I get the car, you're going to tell me if he moved or if he's still there or what you saw. So I go round up the car, and I get them in the car, and they're like, oh no, he's still in there, and I'm like, okay. So we're like sitting now in a position where we can follow him. I'm following in my personal car. It's like, this is crazy. But we follow him, and they're just like all excited, like, this is so cool. And I'm doing, play by play from my cell phone.
Who's gonna expect that a mom with two of her kids in the car is DEA? Yeah.
Clueless. And they had a blast. And then when we finished, they cut the surveillance, and we continued on with our weekend.
Sweet.
Now, did that violate any DEA rules?
I was not in a G car, and I didn't pull anybody over, so I don't think so. I'm just following people around in public places. It was not anywhere. Expectation of privacy did not exist anywhere. So the kids were safe.
In the NFL, it's only a penalty if the ref sees it.
That's right.
Exactly. I like that, Steve.
Yep. You can't throw a flag for a penalty you didn't see.
But they needed someone there, and I was right there. And it was like, well, do you want me to take them back and then join the surveillance, or do you want me to take care of this? And they were like, no, let's just do it. Just do it. And I was like, okay.
Nice.
All right, so let's talk about your arrival in Barbados and your attack by these rabid bats.
Can I go back first, though?
What's your interview? Do whatever you like.
So I do have to tell this story about LA. So another case agent or another agent in our group was working this ecstasy case on this Armenian guy. And we were going to go out and do surveillance. And like I told you, I just dressed normal. So we go out on surveillance, and the guy is supposed to be meeting another target in a restaurant. And the case agent gets on the radio, and he says, is anybody want to go into the restaurant and see the meat? Quiet over the radio. And so I said,
again? Say that again?
Quiet over the radio.
No. What was the phrase again? Does anybody want to go to the restaurant and see the meat?
To watch the meat, the interaction between the targets.
I was thinking,
you talking about meat like eating? Come on, Morgan. The meat. The transaction.
The meat, for God's sake, that's what
oh, that was good.
Who wants to go watch? I thought that was code for like go spy on them in the bathroom or something, or hey, go check out the steak.
No, the meat. So,
Oh, please continue, Regina. It's going
So-
downhill quick.
so so I said I volunteer, and the case agent, he was a novice. He says, "You can't do it. You're a girl." I was like, "Dude, are you serious right now?"
Oh,
I
where's my
said-
brick? Where's my brick?
I said, first of all, it's lunchtime, and it'll be all good. Women can't go to lunch by themselves. It's And he was like, "Oh yeah, go." He said, "Go ahead, Regina, go in." And so I go in, and I position myself between. I sit at a table that's by the door, but where I can see them meeting. So I'm giving the guys play-by-play over my Nextel as the meet is happening. And the meet, so when they start to break up, I said, okay, it looks like they're going to be breaking up. Okay. And so the guys go outside the restaurant, and I make eye contact with the target as he's going out, but he just walks out. And then I said, okay, it looks like they're meeting out. One target's heading this way. And I said, oh, hold up. The other target's coming back into the restaurant. So this guy comes back to the restaurant, beelines for me. He hits on me. And I was just like, this cannot be like happening. This is like so cool. So he comes up to me and he basically hits on me. He's like, hey. I was like, hey. He was like, this
Now, wait a
romantic
minute.
guy.
Is everybody hearing this over the Nextel right now?
No, because I put it down when he came. I was
Okay.
like, he's coming back to me. Okay, I got to go. So I put the phone down. So it's sitting on the table. And he says, he asked me my name. And it's so funny because I'm not going to say my undercover name. And I tell him what it is. I tell him my name, my undercover name, and he tells me his name. And our names are like similar. Yeah, our names are similar. Anyway, so when he says, well, can I have your number? I said, well, no, first he asked me what am I doing here? Why am I here by myself or whatever? And I said, oh, I'm a realtor. And I said, I was just in the area, so I just stopped in. I said, I actually never even ate at this restaurant before, but it seemed like a cool place, so I just stopped in and came in. And he said, oh, okay. He says, well, you're so beautiful. He said, can I have your number? And I said, well, I don't typically give my numbers to guys, but I said, I'll take yours. So he gives me his number. Mind you, we're up already on a Title III on his phone. So I just have like confirmation that we're on the right phone. This is the guy, blah, blah, blah. So he gives me the number, and then he leaves. He says, please call me. And I was like, okay, whatever.
Oh, you bet we're going to be in contact, pal.
Well, let me tell you what happens. So by the time we get back to the office, the guys have already superimposed my picture and this guy's picture into a frame and put it on my desk. Like
a heart picture or something?
Yes, like a picture, like a portrait of us together. And they put it in a frame. So I sit down at my desk and I'm like, what the heck? And we just bust out laughing, right? So this guy, and I said, okay, I told the case agent, I said, you need to let me call him so we can arrange a date. And he was like, no, Regina. I was like, seriously, are you kidding right now? I said, this would be prime because I said, guys love to brag to women. I said, I could probably get him to lay out everything that he's doing if y'all let me. But they would not budge. They said, we don't want to get you in a compromising position. I'm like, I wanted to do like they do in the movies. I wanted to go deep undercover with this guy, like, no, I could do it. Let me date him. Let me go, places. It's like, no. So they never did that, right? They missed the opportunity, even though I confirmed that this is the guy, this is the number he gave me, blah, blah, blah. So when fast forward to the takedown, and I said, for the takedown, I said, when you bring this guy in, you got to let me come into the interview room. And they did. So I walk into the interview room where they have this guy that was hitting on me on the restaurant. And he says, no way, you? And I said, yes.
Yeah, baby, we got you.
So, that was the look on his face was like, he didn't even put it together, completely clueless. But that was my career with bad guys. They never suspected that I was the...
Well, the easiest way is, like you said, all you got to do is sit down there and let these guys come hit on you. And it's like, hey, I don't give you my number, but I'll take yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, what would have been funny is if he gave you a secondary number and you went, that's not your number.
Are you sure this is your number?
Yeah.
Hold on.
But
let me check it against the Title III list that my buddy wanted to.
That's so funny. But then let me tell you, now I'm going to tell you a story that based on that, scenario, the guys started like, "Oh, Regina, we need you to try to meet this target. We need you to try to meet this target." So they put me one day. It was another group needed my help to kind of get a number for a target that they couldn't get up on his phone, but they knew the target, but they needed his number. And so they put me in an undercover scenario. They put me in a Mercedes. At that time, I had never been in a Mercedes before. Didn't know how to work the Mercedes, because as an undercover, you probably should evaluate what the equipment they're giving you. So they gave me a Mercedes. And so basically, I'm behind the scenes following the surveillance team as they follow this guy to some point where he can stop and I can kind of make a connection with him, right? He doesn't do that. He's like all over the place, but he's not stopping. Finally, he stops at a gas station and they're like, "Go in." And I'm like, "A gas station? That is not going to be enough time." They're like, "Regina, just go do it now." So I get out. First of all, I'm in a Mercedes. He pulls up to get gas. I don't even know what side of the gas tank is on. So I pull up. Thank God I pulled up on the right side. So I pull up and he's on the other side of the pump from me and I'm on this side of the pump. And I'm like looking like, and so I tell him, I said, "Sir, can you help me?" I said, "This is my friend's car and I'm trying to put gas in it, but I don't know how to get the thing to open." I'm like really acting like ditzy. That to get the pump, that I really don't know how to open it though. Can you help me figure out how? And he was like, so he comes over and he goes inside the car in this little latch and he gets it open. No, I think it was a pusher. He pushed it and it came open. And I was like, "Oh, thank you." I said, "I'm new to LA." I was like, "What's your name?" And he tells me his name. I give him my name. And I said, "I'm new here." I said, "I don't really know anybody." I said,
"Would you be my friend?"
basically, that's what I said. I said,
"Won't you be my neighbor?"
I said, basically I was trying to get him to befriend me. And he was like, he said, "I'm married, so I really can't, I wouldn't feel comfortable giving you my number or anything like that, because I'm literally asking for this guy's number." And he was like, "No." And so he kind of like blows me off. And this guy is not handsome at all. And I'm thinking, how is this guy blowing me off? Are you kidding me right now? What is going on?
I found the one guy in LA who's faithful to his wife. Who would have known?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, something in me is now crushed because I can't even get this not attractive guy to give me his number. And so it's so funny. So I get back to the office afterwards, and John Fernandez was the ASAC at the time for the group that called me to do the undercover. So he brings me into his office and he was like, "Regina," he was like very serious, like, "I heard what happened. And, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but I'm going to give you this." So he hands me a piece of paper and I open it and it's his number. He's like, "Here's my number. Hoping they make you feel better." And I just bust out laughing. I was like, this cannot be real. So I go back to the case agent. I was like, "What does this guy's wife look like?" And he was like, they showed me a picture. I was like, duh, guys, he likes thick women. I'm not thick. You sent the wrong person in. I said, you needed to send somebody in that had some thickness on their body. I'm too skinny for him. That's why he wasn't checking for me, because anybody else would have taken my number or given me their number or whatever.
I've never heard anybody refer to a woman as thick.
Thick. That means they had curves and meat on their bones. They was a Beyonce when I was a Barbie doll. Yeah, and he wasn't going for the Barbie doll. He wanted the Beyonce.
Fernandez was always a comedian. He's a good guy.
Oh yeah. So I had to tell, because sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But I was devastated. I was like, "What do you mean?"
Now, did you go back to this guy and say, once you're arrested, we say, "What do I have to do to get an A? What do I have to do to have you hit on me?"
No. I actually was not around by the time he was arrested. I was already shipped off to Barbados, but that was hilarious. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy."
So how long did you spend in Barbados?
Barbados, I spent a little over or a little under. I think it was a little over, because I got there in 2005. No, it was under. And I left there in I got there in April of 2005 and left for promotion in November 2009.
What was it like living in Barbados?
Okay, let me start from the beginning. At first, I did not like it.
Why?
Why? Because my boss was an idiot.
Yeah, see, we need to talk about the CA story. That's why I brought you back. So,
My boss was an idiot. But before I talk about my boss, I want to talk about the good agents that were in the office with me. Because I came from a situation where I was fighting coming from the academy. I was in high alert mode. So everything for me was like, who's trying to do something bad to me? Who's not respecting me, right? And so I get to an office where the guys literally sat me down after some months of tolerating my foolishness, I guess, sat me down and said, Regina, we know that you have had difficult times. They said, but you do not have to basically be so aggressive. We know you can do investigations. We know that you're good at the job. Bring it down a notch. And I was like, what does that mean? I didn't. So basically they were telling me that I was coming across as a know-it-all. How do I say? I didn't realize that I was being a butt until they sat me down. And I appreciated the fact that they did, because they could have just been talking about behind my back and isolated me, but they didn't. They cared enough about me and my career, because all of them were senior to me. They were all senior 13s. And they sat me down and just had real talk with me. Even the administrative assistant, she had got to the point where she almost couldn't stand me. And I was like, I thought I was so nice to people. And they were like, no, you came in here like I'm the stuff. You just watch me. I'm not going to watch you. You need to watch what I'm doing. Right. And that it kind of like, it was a gut check. It was a reality check. And so much so that once they had that conversation with me, and I thanked them for it, I reached out to my old administrative assistant from LA, because we were friends outside of work. Well, I was friends with a lot of people outside, but she was like my ride or die. We would go out together on the weekends and stuff like that. So I called her and I said, I need to know what you thought of me in LA. And she was like, what do you mean? And so I told her what they had said. And she said, Regina, she says, you have a good heart, but you were at times very like, just leave me alone and let me do what I need to do. I don't need you. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to, work hard, but I was just very defensive at times. And she said, and when I would get defensive with her, she would just leave me be. But I didn't even realize that I was coming across like that.
So you mean kind of like you were good, you were on a team, but you weren't exactly good at being a teammate at that point.
Not so much because I was a team player. It was just that I didn't take stuff from people. If you like, for example, one of the agents jokingly one time said, who was working a case with me, we were meeting with IRS. And when the IRS agent came in, he said, oh, this is my intel analyst. Oh, I read him anew, because I'm like, excuse me, I went to the same DEA academy. I have the same badge. I am not an analyst. He was just joking, but I took it over the top, because you have just demeaned me in front of this IRS agent who's coming in to work with us when you tell him I'm the intel analyst. So I was very defensive at times because of coming out of the academy. And like I said, I felt like I needed to prove something. So basically they were telling me, you don't need to prove anything. We get it. We see it. You're good, And so from that point on, I just had like a different perspective. I was like, okay. And I really felt relief, because I could breathe. I don't have to be the best of the best.
But is that a good time when the job became more enjoyable for you?
Yes. Yeah. Well, in the sense of working with my coworkers, but not my boss.
Well, we'll talk about it in a second. But what you found was a way to work as hard as you were, but work, like say, more harmoniously. You still wanted to work hard, right?
Yeah. I still wanted to work hard, but there was a matter of respecting other people's skill sets and knowledge, and not because there was only a few people that I respected and I would listen to. I would listen to George Eliot. I would listen to Nick Brooks. I would listen to my supervisor, but any other agent, I was like, what you gonna?
Like, you got nothing you can teach me. What are you gonna do? Yeah.
Exactly. So, and that's not good.
But but it's kind of like you said, it's kind of like a defense mechanism. It's kind of like that's the way you had to be to get to where you were, right? And it was hard to figure out, how do I turn that off? And at some point, it's like you said, we said that your fish doesn't know it's in water. until somebody tells you this, you don't know you're being that way. You think you're doing the right thing. You're doing the hard work. And
Exactly.
and the challenge is you don't want to you don't want to diminish their enthusiasm for the job and agents and or somebody, but at the same time it's like blowing up a balloon. We used to say it's like somebody blowing up a balloon, and I was the same way too. They said I'm all thrust, no vector. I'm like going and going and going. It was like, but when you can figure out how to take your skill sets and your initiative and combine it though with working with the other people very effectively, that's when you start becoming a better agent. That's when you start, in other words, when you start going towards management, that's going to serve you well.
Because if you heard me earlier, like I would do a lot of stuff by myself. I would go and do address checks by myself, stand outside in front of the house, meet my targets randomly, by myself. Not meet them, but if I'm standing out in front of their house, they come out,
Yeah.
I may have a little brief conversation.
The cool thing about that in Barbados is that those agents, they didn't just ostracize you, which could happen very easily in our culture, that they had enough respect for you to sit down and tell you to your face or like you said, talk behind your back. So that's, this might sound like a bad thing, but it actually sounds like an intervention. Is what it sounds like.
It was. And I appreciate every bit of it.
Exactly.
Because I was like, that was a God thing. Because they literally could have been like, because there's people in LA that groups were doing mutinies on because they just couldn't stand the person, but they wouldn't tell them. They'd be telling everybody else, but they're not telling the person that they have the issue with.
Well, the other issue too is when you're in an office the size of Barbados, everybody counts. And I mean not buddy, but like body.
No, exactly. You're absolutely right.
LA, you can hide. A big office like that had how many people did you have in LA?
Oh, I don't even know. It was a lot.
I know
we
a couple hundred.
Yeah. So out of a couple hundred, if one or two is kind of a problem, you kind of get. But when you've got 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 6.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, it's a much bigger impact. And so, let's talk about, have we set the stage properly? Let's talk about it's like Lord Voldemort, he who shall not be named, the country attaché. So
yes.
I want to hear this story. We've been teasing it. So come on, girl, give up the goods.
So the country attaché, he came on DEA as a journeyman. A journeyman, that means, my understanding is that he was like a local task force officer who transitioned to a DEA agent, but didn't have like a college degree.
Yeah.
So that was his background. So I'm coming in, he was close to retirement. He could have retired at any point in time. And he would do stuff in the office to cause confusion with people because he was having a problem with one agent where they were going back and forth, reporting each other to the Office of Professional Responsibility, which is equivalent of internal affairs for a police department. So they were going back and forth with these battles. And one day we were in a meeting and I passed the agent that he was having issues with a note to tell him, to remind him to talk about something in the meeting. Well, he saw that as me basically being on his team. I'm like, but we're all on the same team. So from that point, now I have a target on my back. And when I got to Barbados, I was eligible to take the SAP because I was told, take it as soon as you're eligible. So when I got there, I was a year out from being a 13. And so I was qualified to go and take my SAP, even though because of how my time fell, I wouldn't be able to use the score till the following year if I got a score. So he brought me in to his office with the backup when I let him know I wanted to go take my SAP. And he proceeded to tell me, Regina, he says, you're an aggressive agent. He says, you're moving up fast. He says, but I don't think you should go take the SAP. And I'm like, and I'm going to say this because my boss was an African-American man. And it hurt me that I'm like, why are you telling me not to take the SAP when everybody else that look like me, don't look like me, have said, go take it as soon as you're eligible. If nothing else, just to see what it's like. And if you do well, you have a score that never goes away. You can use it when you want to use it. And he's telling me, don't go and take it. And I was like, well, I don't understand. He says, Regina, what's going to happen if you go there and you make a good score? They're not going to be wondering, saying, oh, she's a good agent. They're going to be like, who did she sleep with to get there or to get that score? if I tell you I felt about this big in this man's office, and that's one of the moments I wanted to cry, but I didn't, because I'm one of those people that also cry when I get angry, but I know not to do it, around people. But I was just so hurt that this man was telling me not to go and take this test because people were going to get the impression that I slept with somebody to get the score. I was just like, you got to be kidding. And his backup was in here in the room as if he thought this was okay, this conversation he was having with me.
Holy cow.
And so I come out of this meeting, and I had already done my homework as far as who would be evaluating me or who was eligible. And because I hadn't been there for 90 days, technically he would not be my reviewing supervisor. And so I reached out to my previous supervisor, who was Bill Bogner, that's my boy right there. Bill Bogner
Currently
was my
the SAC of Los Angeles.
Yes, currently the SAC of Los Angeles.
So what you're saying is this all occurred within your first 90 days of showing up in Barbados.
Correct.
And because it was within that first 90 days, this waste of space was not officially your supervisor until that 90 days, or your reviewer until that 90 days was over.
Correct. So I reached out to Bill and asked him if he would be my reviewer, and he said absolutely. So my current supervisor, the CA, basically told me, well, I still have first right of refusal, and he says, and I'm not going to give you all fives. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. What's going to happen? And so, like I say, I get there in November, I go home to California, which that's my home that I left. So I go back there, and I'm with my pastor and his wife, because I had a really good church there. And I'm sad. I had got to the point where literally, I'm not a drinker, but I was literally going home every night and taking like a shot of rum just to be able to calm my nerves and go to sleep. That's how stressful the office had become. And it wasn't the people in the office, it was the supervisor. He was just evil. He would do stuff like, for example, I was responsible for the island of Grenada, and interacting with the counterparts there. And he brought me in with his backup again, and he told me, go and go make a payment to our counterparts. So I said, okay. And he says, whatever you do, don't give the money to the landlord, because we had an undercover house, and there was a landlord that the counterparts would pay the money to for the house. And I understood all of that. But usually when you go to make any type of payments, you have another agent to go with you. But the agent that was my partner in Grenada, was the guy that he was having issues with. So he's sending me there by myself. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go to Grenada. I meet with the counterparts. I give them the money. I have them sign the documents that they have to sign. And from that point, they start to we're finished with that business. So we're just walking around the building, and he's introducing me to people and stuff. And he introduces me to this random man. When I meet him, he just says this. He just tells me his name, but I see him pass the envelope to this guy. So I was like, that's interesting, but it doesn't register with me who this guy is. And I didn't give him the envelope. The captain gave him the envelope, or the superintendent. And so that's done. I go back to Barbados. My boss calls me into the office with his backup, and he says, I thought I told you not to give the money to the landlord. I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't give the money to the landlord. He was like, yes, you did. I said, no, I didn't. I said, here's my 103. What are you talking about? I gave it to the counterparts. He was like, well, I just want to let you know I can spend it however I want to spend it. And you did what I told you not to do. I was
Holy cow.
Okay, this is not good, because you're basically telling me that you'll lie on me if you want to.
What's a 103?
That's a document that confidential sources sign when we give them money to make buys or to pay them for their service.
Right. And so you got that. Let me ask you, let's stop here for just a second. And maybe you'll figure it out later. Why is this guy on your case? Was it that you were more successful than him, and he didn't want somebody else who looked like him to be more successful? He couldn't take a woman outdoing a man. I just don't get why this guy was not on team Gina as opposed to on the opposing team.
And I'm going to tell you that just now.
And let me guess. Did it have anything to do? You made the comment about you slept your way. The people who think you slept with somebody. Was that part of his intention?
I don't know. But one thing he did start doing, like on the weekends, he would call me. He would say, and I only let him do it twice. And after that, I shut it down. He called me on the weekend and he said, Regina, I need you to come to such and such location because we have some counterparts here and we need to have a meet with them and kind of, entertain them or whatever. I said, okay, I go. I go to the location, and at the location are some of his old friends from the States here on vacation. And what do you want me here for? These are not counterparts.
Arm
This is not
candy? That's what he thinks you're going to be?
exactly. So I was like, okay, I'm out. So I leave. He does it again the second time. And the third time I tell him, I said, sir, don't call me ever again for this is not liaison work. And I don't know what you thought I was here for, but this ain't it. Right. And so I just cut off really all ties with him, stopped talking to him. But this is the thing. So I had a friend, another female agent whose husband was a task force officer, but they were like friends, like friends. And so my friend came down to visit me in Barbados, her and her husband. So they were staying at my house and they wanted to meet with him or to hang out with him. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want this man in my house. But okay. So because they were there and I was just kind of like milling around while they were talking to him. Well, he got drunk at my house with his friend from the States. This was my friend's husband. And he starts to explain or tell them why I'm here. I don't even know if he remembers telling them this, but he says, oh yeah, I got Regina down here not because she's this good agent. I got her down here because I need to show her something from when she ran off her mouth at that the NABNA conference. The NABNA conference is the National Association of Black Narcotics Agents. We had a conference. And what had happened was I was there. I was like probably like 2 or 3 years on the job. And he was at the conference. And because he was eligible for retirement, he was talking to the person that was speaking. They were talking about something about retirement and stuff and financial planning for your future as agents and stuff like that. And he was asking questions, and because I'm young and I'm stupid sometimes, so I lean over to my friend and I ask her. I said, "Oh, I wish he would stop asking questions so some of the young agents can ask questions." I didn't realize that was him, the man that I'm referring to. So he proceeds to tell him, because when we were at that NABNA conference, she wanted me to shut up so that young agents could ask questions. I did not realize that was him. So he basically brought me there because he was going to teach me my place. And I was like, wow, okay, this is what it is. So I go home. I go home in November for Thanksgiving. I'm with my pastors. And I'm like, I know I'm done because I basically told this man, be quiet to my friend, which he overheard. I didn't know he heard me. And he has it out for me. He's told me, he's already said, he demonstrated he'll lie on me, and he's not going to give me all fours if he's the person that decides to rate my package. So my pastor asked me, what's going on? Do you like Barbados? And I was like, I don't like it, because at that point I didn't have community there. I didn't have any friends outside of work, and all the agents were married, and you can only, in my mind, I didn't want to intrude on their lives, because wives will only let you be around their husbands and their families for so long. It's like, why is she here again? So I was really feeling like very, very lonely. And I already told you about me having to drink the shots to relax and go to sleep. And so I told my pastors all that, and they were like, well, let's just pray about it. And I was like, okay. So they prayed, I just wanted relief. I wanted it to have a good office. And that was it. And then later on in the afternoon, let me check my phone to see if everything is okay. And so I checked my work phone. I had tons of message. Call us. The agent's telling me to call them. So I called one of the agents in the office, and he says, Regina, are you sitting? I said, yeah, what's up? And he was like, he told me the person is dead. I was like, I said,
the country attaché, this guy?
He's dead. I said, what do you mean he's dead? He said, well, he had a heart attack. He said he was about to go and change to go golfing, and he went upstairs and he didn't come down. So when his wife went up, he had a heart attack and he was dead. And I was like, okay. I was like, I didn't know what to do with that, because I didn't ask God to kill the man. I just wanted relief. But that was what happened. And so the agent proceeds to tell me, that the SAC has cleared. If you want to go to the funeral or whatever, you can go from California to where he was where he lived in the States with his family, because his family was not in the country with him. And I was just like, I didn't know how to take it, because I didn't know his disposition. I didn't know if he was a believer. I was like, is this somebody that's going to hell? I don't know. So I was like all messed up in my head. But at the end of the day, I was awful grateful, because I knew that would be, that his presence and the things that he brought into the office would be done with. And so when I went back, we had a good group, we had a good office, and his backup became the acting CA, and he honored everything. I got my packet done. Wagner signed off on it. They co signed off on it for me to go take my SAP, and I went and took my SAP. And after that, everything else just fell into place. I developed community there, met a good group of girlfriends, and found a good church, and everything from there was golden. I met my husband there, and did some really good cases there. So,
I mean, what a beautiful place to be living.
Yeah, he says he's my souvenir.
So where's your husband from?
My husband's from Barbados. He's Barbadian.
And how did you meet? Did he hit on you and ask you for your number? And did you give him your number this time?
Well, we actually met in church, and he didn't initially ask for my number. He actually didn't ask for my number at all, because what happened was wait a
minute. Are you kidding me? It's like, do you know who I am? Somebody turned me down only once, and they went to jail, pal.
No. It wasn't like that, because all they pretty much knew from my church, well, my pastor knew what I did for, they just knew that I was a part of the embassy. I was attached to the embassy. And I would tell people I worked for the IRS. Once I tell them that, they were like, no more questions.
A small nonprofit organization.
And so we end up dating because our pastor at our church, we had a whole bunch of like 20-year-old to like early 30-year-old singles at our church. And our pastor was like, ooh, we need to have some organized activities, because we don't want nobody to get in trouble.
Now, did you have to fill out or disclose anything to DEA that you were dating a foreign national? Does any of that come up?
Yeah, I did. I did have to do that. Once we decided that we were going to actually date, yeah, we did. I had to notify them.
And when did you let him know you weren't with the IRS but the DEA?
Right after he told me he wanted to. So when we went to lunch, when our pastor set up this group, it was like a group of 6 of us, and so we went to have a planning meeting on how the singles ministry was going to look. And I basically told the group who I was, what I did, and I told them, I said, to be honest, I'm not one of those that's looking for marriage, because I'm going to work my job, go see the world, and when I retire, I'll adopt some kids. That was going to be my life. There was no husband in that scenario. And so my husband basically says, well, let's pray for you. I'm like, okay. So they pray for me. And I didn't know at the time, but he says, as soon as he finished praying for me, he said he heard God say, and she's your wife. Yeah, which is funny, because my husband wasn't a big fan of American women. He wanted nothing to do with American women, because all he could tell about American Black women is they neck workers, back talkers, and he didn't want nothing to do with that.
And a whole bunch of attitude.
And he didn't want anything to do with that. But he listened. And so that night I went home, and because we had all signed our name and number on the roster for the group, he had my number. So he called me. And we talked on the phone for about 3 hours. It was crazy. And it was so bad that it was like 2:00 in the morning. I was like, I'm flying out, because I was going to be going on home leave for 2 weeks in the States. And I was like, I got to go to sleep, because I got to catch a plane in a little bit. And so I went to sleep. And so we were basically emailing, because it wasn't instant messaging back then. We were basically AOLing, emailing each other every day that I was gone. And so I would go out and be about during the daytime, and I'd try to get back and see what email he left for me. And we just communicated like that. It was just so easy, our conversation and our emails and stuff. And then when I got back to Barbados, he asked me, he said he wanted to court me, which was, court me, that's like a term my grandmother would use. Like, what are you talking about? He says, I want to get to know you to see if you can be my wife. And that's how it all started.
So how long did the courting last before you consummated the deal?
Well, so we dated first, because we dated for about 6 months. And I was really afraid of a relationship because in my family, I hadn't seen marriages work. And I didn't know if I wanted to be married. I was afraid, but I knew that he was a blessing from God because he honored me. And I say that because God told me in my early 20s that the man for me would honor me. And he was that man who was honoring me. He wasn't trying to do and didn't do the do until we got married. But he was really honoring me. And when I realized that he's the one that God has sent for me, I freaked out. I was like, because I didn't think I deserved him. I didn't think I was lovable like that. And I was very set in my ways. I was a headstrong woman. And really, when I realized that I really loved him, really liked him, he was in my house. He was sitting in my favorite chair. And he was using my remote control and turning the TV. Before that, anytime a guy would come to my house, dude, get out of my chair, sit on the couch, and don't you dare turn my television.
That's what I said. That's my channel. Leave it alone.
But he was doing it and it didn't bother me. And I was like, wow, I really like this guy. This is different. But we broke up because I started doing the fool because I was just afraid. And we broke up. I felt like God told me to break up, which I know he did, because if I would have continued on the path of my craziness and confirming that Black American women are crazy, he would have probably been damaged because I was doing all kind of crazy stuff. I would literally if we had a cup and the cup was purple, literally purple, and he said, Regina, that cup is purple. I was like, no, it's not. That cup is red. Like, I was just picking fights for no reason because I just wanted him to break up with me. But he wasn't going to do it because he heard in his head, this is my wife. And I am like freaking out because I'm seeing that this is my husband, but I don't know if I'm ready for that. And so we broke up, and we were broke up for a year, still working the singles ministry and doing everything in that arena. And then one night I was at my church at Bible study on a Friday night. And God gave me a word for our church. And I told my pastor what it was. And he was like, I want you to share it. So I shared it. And afterwards he came back to me and he says, Regina, I feel like you have a prophetic anointing on your life. And he says, I want to help you cultivate that, but I need you to go back and mend that relationship with Brian. And I was like, mend it? What's wrong with it? We're engaged in single ministry. We're doing fine. What do I? So I did. So I leave out of the church and I call Brian on a Friday night as if he had nothing going on in his life. I was kind of arrogant. God had to humble me. And so I called him and I said, Pastor said we need to talk. And he was like, okay. So we scheduled to meet the following day. And as I was planning to meet with him, I'm one of those people, if I go into a meeting, I'm going in with notes. So I started writing notes about all the things that he did wrong in our relationship. And I'm writing and I'm writing and I'm writing. And as I start to write, the letter starts to be a letter about me complaining about him to a letter from God to me telling me, Regina, every wall that you put up to protect yourself, it wasn't protecting you. It was just keeping out the person I wanted you to have, the person I wanted you to spend your life with. He was like, just let Brian love you. And I'm just like, okay, this is weird. What am I supposed to do with this?
I'm no longer in control. How can that be? I've got to be the one in charge.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he said, share it with him. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. And so he gets to my house and I tell him, just like I just told you guys, I said, I was writing this letter complaining about you, and this is how it turned out. And God told me to tell you. So I just read the letter to him, and he just sat there when I finished. And he said, okay. He said, I don't know if I'm ready to date you again, but we'll just see what happens. And from there, that day we started back dating. And yeah, that was probably around April. And in no, it's probably in June, because in November he proposed to me on my birthday, and the following year, June, we got married.
And how many years has that been now?
14 years.
All right.
And he softened me. He's the reason I'm soft.
Yeah, I can think of a lot of adjectives to describe you, Regina. That's not one of them.
Yeah, I wouldn't go there. I'd just say,
I'm soft, sweet, and patient now.
Yeah. Let me just say, I would go through a door with you. How about that?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. When I need it, yes. But what I learned is, and I tell my different females and stuff that I mentor, I tell them I had to learn how to come home, put my gun to the side, and put on my tiara and my high heel shoes, and let him be the head of our house.
That's very cool. Cool story.
Well, but I didn't know about the tiara, but definitely the high-heeled shoes.
You
we know
gotta
about
have the tiara. Because I'm the queen, so I have to have my tiara.
That's it.
Hey, and
Wow.
this episode's been interesting because it's not been so much about the cases you work, because you've done great work, right? What it's really been amazing is to watch your journey through all of this and everything that you overcame, regardless of the obstacles that were thrown at you. But you said something, and we talked about it on a real quick break, but you said, yeah, it's about, you did a lot of good work, but you reached a point, right, where you decided it was time to part ways.
Yeah.
Wait, before you go down that road, where did you go from Barbados? Because you might recognize somebody's name here, Morgan.
Yes, I took the
that's
SAP.
right. I had that note here.
I took the SAP, and I had a score, and I was being looked at for a job in Las Vegas, LA, and Puerto Rico. And Javier Pena, who was already my SAC because I was in Barbados, which is under the Caribbean Division, he reached out to me. He says, Regina, these other officers want you, but I want you too. He says, where do you want to go? And I said, because my husband had already did the pros and cons in case we got the call. And so we said we want to go to Puerto Rico. And he was like, done deal. And he promoted me, and I went there as a supervisor.
And so that was your group soup, your 14, right?
That was my 14. My first job was in Puerto Rico. When I first got there, I was over the special support unit. And that unit it's like an administrative unit, which is over training and CS management, witness protection, all of that kind of administrative training, recruiting. And I did that for 8 months because I asked my ASAC, I said, I want an enforcement group. I don't want to stay in admin too long. I need an enforcement group. And so the first enforcement group I had there was the Haida airport group. So I was over at the airport group and doing some phenomenal stuff over there. That group, when I worked over there, that was the first time that the airport group actually had a Title III out of the airport group.
Very cool.
And we did some very neat stuff in the airport that I can't talk about online, but we were working so good with the port authorities and with TSA there that we were doing stuff that was just, we got a lot of bad actors out of that airport.
Nice. Very nice.
We had cases that made national news coming out of our group.
Wow. And such a small world, because this is something you don't know, but when I was doing work on Plan Colombia, that was Javier's second time in Colombia, and he was working out of the embassy. We literally probably walked by each other and didn't know it. So I was down, back. So again, it's one of those things, small world. If we all knew where we had been, you would realize sometimes too that we're within 10 feet of each other, 20 feet of each other, and didn't know it, right? Past each other in the hall.
Yeah, and he was an excellent boss. I love him. He was so funny. He gave you 3-minute meetings. Literally, if I was walking in the hall and he would see me, like, Regina, come, tell me what's going on in your group. So I would come in, and it would be like clockwork. I started to track it. He would he would let you start talking. When 3 minutes hit, he would stand up. That means the meeting's over. But 3 minutes is all he would give you, but he gave you 3 minutes.
Really?
I loved it. And I actually had to take that, because for me, I would find myself having like these really long meetings. And I'm like, I need to be able to have short meetings. And so I would start standing up to let my people know the meeting is over. We cannot continue.
You know why Javier had 3-minute meetings? Because he had a date.
Probably. One thing he believed in is team building. We always had something team building going on. I loved it.
He's into that, and that's fantastic. Anybody I've ever spoken to anywhere has never said a bad word about him as a boss.
And and he was there as he was retiring, because I was there when he retired, and I was helping him package his Pablo Escobar PowerPoint, because he didn't know how to put it together to be able to take it on a CD somewhere. So I helped him do that. Yeah.
How about that?
And that still continues to this day when we were recording stuff.
Absolutely. We're into our eighth year of our worldwide tour talking about that topic.
Boy, and like we're talking, Mark, talk about a shelf life. Most things it's like, but people continue to be fascinated by it.
There's nobody more surprised than he and I.
Yeah. Well, as long as the checks keep clearing the bank, that's okay with you, right?
That's right.
The goal is for the Murphys not to eat cat food in retirement. So we're
just down at your house, Murph. If you ever thought about eating cat food in retirement, you shouldn't have built that pool, that hot tub, and the lanai out back.
Look, do I have a vacation spot?
Yes, ma'am. Anytime.
It's great. I was there. I'm telling you, great location, and not too far from the airport. Just a real nice neighborhood.
So I can just spend a night when we're going to catch a cruise out.
Sure. We're actually going with some of our children and grandchildren this coming Christmas on a Disney Wish cruise.
Nice. I'm a cruiser. My husband and I, we love cruising. We're so glad it's opening back, because COVID messed us up, because we used to do at least one a year.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we're only an hour from the Cape Canaveral launch site over there from the docks.
Nice.
So let's talk about that then. Like I said, that was a good catch, Murph, because I had the note. I forgot to look at it.
No problem.
JP, but you parted ways. So, I mean, why did you bring your career to an end?
Well, I became a GS-15, and my first 15 position was at headquarters, and I was under at the time Office of Global Enforcement, and I was responsible for 2 weeks for the Mexico and South America. Mexico, Central America, and Canada for 2 weeks before they realized, well, we probably should have put her in the Latin America and Caribbean, since that's my background and all of my connections are there. So I went over as the deputy section chief first, and then probably about 8 or 9 months, I transitioned to the actual section chief, where I was in charge of the staff coordinators, which were GS-14s, and we were responsible for coordinate international operations in those areas. So I did that, and I continued to wanting to grow, and I wanted to see behind the curtain. The one thing they say about headquarters, I thought I was going to avoid headquarters, because I did my 14 headquarters time at SOD, but I was the first person to hold the SOD position, but in San Juan, Puerto Rico, which they kind of made that position for me, because they wanted me to be in that position. And so I was actually still stationed in Puerto Rico, but I was under Special Operations Division. And Mary Pico, I give her all the kudos to, because this woman, she so took me under her umbrella and made sure I was in the right room to meet the right people to just propel my career. She, even though I was in Puerto Rico, she was like, come into the office, at least come to the office at least once a month, so that they don't lose sight of you. And I was like talking to everybody, and people were like, who is this girl in Puerto Rico that's calling us, for coordination? Because I was seeing all kind of connections and stuff. And I was very all over the place with putting connections together. And I appreciated Marie Pico for encouraging me in that, in developing cases for the field.
She's a very hardworking lady.
Yeah, she is. I mean, I had a whole lot of respect for her. If I tell you, she, like I say, she took me under her arm, under her wing. And from there, like I say, I got the 15 promotion, and I know I got it because she put me in the room with the person who called me and said, these jobs are coming open. You apply for all of them, because you're going to get one of them. You just apply for all of them. And so I did, and I got the deputy section chief job first, and then ultimately the section chief. But
when you moved to headquarters, where'd you live?
I lived in Alexandria, because I been in LA, been in Puerto Rico, been in Barbados. I was sick of traffic.
Yeah.
I could not do the long drive. And so me and my husband, we we just bit the bullet and we bought a very expensive home to be close to the office in Alexandria. And I just went up Route 1 and I was at my house in 15 minutes.
Oh, that's a great, I mean, that's a great drive too. When you go south, like you're headed towards Richmond, one is a great drive through the country and everything.
Yeah. So I was right there. That's where we were. And then by fluke, I said I wanted to, like I say, see behind the curtain. And I wanted to be an executive assistant. And I was trying to be the executive assistant for my boss, the person that was my boss when I was a staff coordinator. But for some reason, he wouldn't select me. And it was weird because I was really killing it as far as in relation to his rest of his section chiefs, who would often call on me to, how do we do this? Or what do we do this? Or how do you think we should strategize with this? But he didn't want me to be the person that was walking around with him all the time and in his business, because an executive assistant is basically in your boss's business. So he didn't select me. So I had the privilege of working on our SAP behind the scenes in the creation of our SAP. And in this meeting, strategic meeting, I met Tim Jennings.
Good man.
I didn't know him before then. He didn't know me, but we were in this week-long section to develop the test that we just kind of jailed. We had good conversations, input was good, but I didn't know that he was considering me. I didn't even know where his position was or what he was really doing in relation to DEA. So it comes to turn out that he was actually in transition because he was going to be coming into the building, going under as as the deputy chief for operations management. And and then we also went to, that was the first time I met him. Then we went to the Notre Dame Leadership School together. We were in the same class, and he was in a different group, but my group, we had to do presentations and stuff. So he further got to see who I was as a leader and my thoughts and how I felt about leadership.
What year was that?
This was when I transitioned to connect. This would have been 2008, 2019.
Oh,
2019.
Okay. I did I think the exact same course with Notre Dame. I did it in 2011.
No, I was in 2000.
Except you completed it successfully. He didn't.
You want to see my transcript, pal?
I got the transcript right here.
So he reaches out to me when he gets the word that he's actually going to go to operations management, and he basically says, "Can you come meet with me?" I was like, "Okay." So I go and meet with him, and he proceeds to tell me that he's considering me to be his executive assistant. I was like, "Okay." And I'm like inside, like all excited, like this is happening, Lord, this is about divine setup. And he says, he asked me about myself and what my expectation. I asked him, tell him everything. And then I asked him, I said, "So do you want a yes person?" I said, "Because if you want a yes person, I'm not going to be that person." I said, "Because I'm always going to be honest about situations. I'm going to, if there's a problem, I'll bring it to you, but I also will come with solutions, because I don't want to just be the deliverer of a bad information. Bad problems. I want to be able to also bring you solutions." And I said, "Are you going to let me see behind the curtain?" He was like, "What? See behind?" I was like, "Yeah. When you're not around, or even when you are you going to be taking me into the meetings with you? Because that's the only way, really, I can always make sure I'm covering you, because there's no situation that I'm not aware of, and vice versa." And he said, "Well, of course." And I said, "Well, I'm your girl. When do we start?" And the rest is history, that's good. But there was another deputy chief that was also recruiting me, and I was going to take that job. But when Mr. Jennings came along, I was like, I'm not going to take his position. So I had to go back to this other boss and say, "I'm going to go over here." And this boss had the audacity to tell me, "Well, that's good, but if I don't get my number one pick, then you may not be able to go over there to that section." I'm like, "Are you serious? You're going to hijack my career for your good, not for what I want?" I was like blown away.
And if he's not on the career board, he doesn't have that authority to make that decision anyway.
Exactly. But it just baffled me. But Mr. Jennings, he was like, "No, don't worry about it. We're going to get it done." He went up to the chief of ops, and it was like, it wasn't even an advertised thing. It was just like transfer. She's a 15. It's a 15 position. Just transfer, and it just happened. So, yeah. So, and from there, it was like my eyes opened up to how the sauce is made. I saw the budget. We strategized about hard to fill, post and headquarters rotations, and I was on all these committees and going over to the State Department, and it was the best. I was like, I'm so glad I didn't bypass headquarters, because it made me equipped to be an ASAC in the field. And I tell people now, I was like, I know nobody wants to go to headquarters, but if you really want to be a well-rounded leader, you need to go into the building.
In addition to that, you make so many contacts that are going to be beneficial for the people that work under your area of responsibility after that. That's the golden ticket of going to headquarters. Nobody wants to go. Nobody wants to go.
Yeah, you come out. If there's an issue with HR, I know a person in HR, I'll call, So, yeah.
So we need to get to the most important part of the interview now. It's how you ended up in the great state of Kansas.
Yes. Well, after becoming Mr. Jennings' executive assistant, Bill Callahan, who we were actually in GSI school together, 14 GSI school
Billy
together.
Callahan. Good people.
Yes. Yeah, he's so cool. So he starts to recruit me to come to, at first, St. Louis. And so he brings me down to over
See,
to
I
St.
got
Louis.
paranoid
I
now.
gotta get it right. Look, I don't want Morgan to correct me. So he brings me out to St. Louis to do a presentation at a girls expo as a speaker, a spotlight speaker, to talk about leadership and basically tell them about my career and let them know that all things are possible, basically. And he took me around, showed me St. Louis, and I was like, okay, St. Louis is good. And the job that in St. Louis that he, I think, was looking at, his ASAC didn't retire. He stayed, so that was no longer on the table. So he said, that's okay. He said, have you ever thought of Kansas? Because that's even better. And I was like, I didn't know anything about Kansas other than the Wizard of Oz. I was like, is this a country?
Please.
What is, seriously, I did not know anything about Kansas.
Did you have to get out your map and look where Kansas was?
I knew where it was. I didn't know anything about Kansas. And so I started doing my homework, looking at what's the make up the office, what's the drug trends. And I was like, it looks like a nice place. Their school system, even I don't have kids, I looked at the school system. They're ranked, their kids or their school districts are in the top 5% for the US. They have excellent schools and stuff. And I was just like, okay. And so we came out for just a visit, and my husband and I, we loved it, and we were like, we're in. And so the position came open and we applied, and the rest is history. And it was the best decision coming here. I have had the opportunity, and I'll just be transparent, because I didn't know, coming from Texas and being exposed to racism, I didn't know if Kansas was going to be the same type of atmosphere in some arenas. But I got here, and people in Kansas, I don't think they even realize how nice they are. Literally, you can go in the gas station convenience store, and before you leave out of there, you know everything about the person behind the counter. And they know that means people, they just talk to you. They just welcome you. How can they help? We got here in May of 2020 during COVID, and we knew all our neighbors during the first week. That had never happened. We've been many places, and we never knew our neighbors that quick. So much so they're like, we're having a barbecue. Y'all want to come over? I'm like, it's COVID, but they're having a bar. It's outside. So we and they just brought us into their lives. And so we had community and work, and then in church and our community, and we found a great church, and everything just fell into place. And it was just and I would go into meetings where I would be the only, and the people just wanted to hear from DEA. They didn't care what I looked like. They was like, what is DEA saying on this issue? What is DEA doing on this issue? And I would just give it to them. And they just wanted to hear and start building relationships, starting task forces that didn't exist before, and talking to the media, because I do give credit to our administrator, because DEA has always kind of been a covert operation. So we didn't really talk a lot to the media. But that door was open to talk to the media and to get out and talk to the community and talk to students. And I started to love that part of the job more than actually the work of the job, if that makes sense. When I would go to a school and kids would see me and be like, "Oh, you're an Asian," and say, "Oh, I can do that too." And I tell them, but this was my difficulties. I couldn't read, but I didn't let that stop me. And you may not have parents at home that are supporting you, but don't let that stop you, and encouraging them. That's why I felt like I was getting more excitement and more, I was happy in that arena versus the ins and out, because I'm like signing papers, getting finger cramps and reading ops plans. And I'm just like, and trying to live through my GSs who are living through the agents, like, what's going on? What are you going to be? How are you going to be on the street? But it wasn't the same. It was like, felt like I was being pulled more and more to the community. So I just started processing. I'm like, Lord, what are you saying to me? Is it time? Because when I became eligible to retire, it was like all these doors started to open for me to connect with the community. And the more and more I connected, the more and more I wanted to be in a community.
So before you punch out, hold on. We got to talk about a couple things before you get there, because I want to talk about your visit to the Great Garden City and visiting the DEA. Look, that's a drive from Olathe
Yes,
in Kansas City.
and even that in itself, because I made sure I went to all of my office regularly, and the people in Garden City was like shocked. Law enforcement out there and stuff, they were like, "You came to visit Garden City?" I was like, yeah, y'all are important to us. The partnership is important. So I was very intentional in making sure I went to some towns that people in Kansas that are from Kansas, like the Overland Park and area. I was
They didn't even know existed. Yeah.
They didn't know it existed. And meeting in all the sheriff's meetings and the police association meetings and going to these meetings. So they was like, no, DA is here. We want to partner with you. We're not trying to take nobody's case. We're trying to come alongside and you say, how can we augment the things that you're doing? How can we help? And they appreciated it, because before nobody had ever even.
I think there was like a 5 or 6 person RA in Wichita, wasn't there?
There's a resident office in Wichita. There's 5 agents out there and a whole bunch of task force officers, because we've actually added them. The office is actually expanding out there.
That's who we did a lot when I was a detective. That's where we worked with a lot of guys, Troy Derby and Randy Odell and guys like that. Back. You probably don't recognize those names, but Randy Odell was famously he was ATF. I'm sorry. Troy Derby was DEA. But yeah, no, we had great relations with those folks. Good training,
Yeah, and they still continue. Like I say, it was. Yeah, the guys and girls that are out here, the agents and the task force officers, they're killing it. They're doing,
and just let people know too. People think Kansas, nice little state and stuff. There is a lot of drug trafficking. There's a lot of movement through Kansas because you've got 2 major interstates that go through there. And Operation Pipeline, with Epic, Operation Pipeline is US 54 that comes up out of the Texas border, up and through Kansas on Highway 54 there.
Yep. And it's weird because I usually use this term mostly when I was foreign, but it's a transshipment state. Everything going north from Mexico or from California, from Colorado, it all comes through Wichita. And inadvertently, stuff is getting left in Wichita. It's staging locations in Wichita, in Kansas. So yeah, they're not exempt. And it was weird when I first got here. It was when the fentanyl pills were first being seized. And initially, we wasn't seeing them. And then all of a sudden, there it is. They're there, and people are overdosing. And it just got crazy. Yep, until we had to get the word out there that don't take these pills.
One pill can kill.
Yes, exactly.
So when you and I had the pleasure of meeting last year, there were quite a few people calling you about, hey, don't retire yet. Well, you still got promotions. They wanted to move you up in the senior executive service ranks, correct?
Yeah, that is true.
Why did you turn down becoming, an appointee, a big shot, somebody who could really lead and do things? I mean, that's like the ultimate goal, right? You move up. If you're 15, you got to be an SESer.
Well, I had a SES score since 2019 is when I got my best qualified score, and I had interviews with UDEM. I've had interviews with the current administrator, and I don't know. I don't know why I hadn't been selected, and every time I come out of an interview and the list comes out and my name's not on it, everybody's wondering, what happened. And initially, because I wasn't familiar with the SES interviews, I wasn't even, I had to learn how to interview. And like I say, anytime I know there's a challenge, I'm going to work on the challenge. So I reached out to some of my mentors and people who are SESs to help me to be able to articulate what I need to articulate to answer the questions in interviews. And I had that. So I started doing some really good interviews. But I think, can I say this? I think sometimes if you turn down a job, there's no more job offers. And I turned down a job that was not a promotion, but somewhere that they wanted me to go. And to me, it was why do I have to take that route? Why do I have to settle? And I wasn't willing to do that because at this point in my time, in my life, I'm into retirement. I don't want to be creating new debt with buying houses and moving.
And being uprooted and having to move again.
Uprooted and being moved again for not a promotion. This is a temporary in-between lateral job. No, I'm not doing that. And so I said no. And I think from there, even though because there's a board that sends you to the administrator's interview, and I was clearly qualified, so I'm passing the board and getting the shortlisted to have the interviews. Once I got before the administrator, it was still nothing. And the thing that really hurt me, and because I always said I never want to get to a point where I'm disgruntled, because I love DEA. DEA has afforded me to be able to see the world, to do great things, meet great people. But when you have a scenario where, like I said, I was the executive assistant of operations management. I've been all over the world, done all kinds of cases, brought initiatives to DEA that are still in existence. For example, the airport action team in Puerto Rico. When I was the GS there, I was trying to figure out who's the holder of all the information for airports. Who's tracking seizures? Who's tracking contacts with people at this airport that stopped at another? Nobody was tracking that. So I went to operations, domestic operations, and asked, "Are you guys doing it?" They were not doing it. I went to SOD. Is anybody doing it? No. And so I went back to OD, and they said, "You do it." So I started in Puerto Rico. I reached out to all of the divisions, their airports, for the airports, and said, "Are you guys willing to start this group? We're going to have monthly meetings. We're going to talk about what resources we have, what confidential sources we have in the airports, and what we're seeing, and how we can work together. If we have some dope going to New York and we don't want to stop it, we want you guys to go out and do surveillance. Will you guys be willing to do that?" And if I tell you, we started doing that, because before it's just like a random call, somebody saying, "Can you stop someone in the airport?" Of course we can stop somebody, but we wanted to follow it. And we were able to do that under the AirTag. And that is still existing today. And it's not like in Puerto Rico anymore. It's at headquarters. But that started with, it started with me. And so when I applied for Mr. Jennings' job. When he retired, he was like, "Rogeana, it's a no-brainer. You should get this position." I applied and interviewed well. But again, this is after I interviewed for this position after turning down the other one. So I go into the interview, and I sense body language, everything is different. So I'm like, okay, but I'm still going to, give you the answers to your questions. And when I see the announcement come out, and no disrespect to the lady that got it, because I actually was mentoring her and telling her, "Yeah, you need to do this, you need to do that." So I got it. But this young lady, she's been one division all her career. She came to headquarters and was promoted as she was an executive assistant, which typically they say executive assistants should come from section chiefs, but she went from a 14 to an executive assistant, white female, to an executive assistant. And then she gets the position, has no experience in OM, only been in one office. her whole career, and she gets the job. And I'm like blown away. I'm like, how did that happen? And so I called her and I told her, I said, I'm not going to say her name, but I told her, I said, I'm really happy for you, but I'm telling you I'm hurt, not because I said, I'm hurt because I don't understand it. I said, if we put our resumes against each other, it's a no-brainer. I sat in Mr. Jennings' seat. When he wasn't around, I was running the office. And sometimes when he was like, Rogeana, you got this, you know? But I was not good enough to actually sit in the seat. But they thought someone that had no experience whatsoever, who is actually struggling now. And I'm praying for her because I want her to do well, but she's struggling. And it's sad.
I tell you what, when I met you out there, and you and I never met before that I recall, and the hospitality that you showed me, it brought back, and our listeners have heard us talk about this before, the law enforcement culture, the brotherhood and the sisterhood that we have that continues till we all die. You know, you took me out to lunch. That was good. Introduced me to the Kansas barbecue. But then at the office, you gave me your conference room. Now, I'm no longer have any security clearances. You know, I'm a has-been. I've been retired 10 years from DEA. And just the fact that the way that you and your folks treated me told me that this is a well-run office. This is the people that they got their shit together. They know what they're doing. And I just want to say publicly here on Game of Crimes that you don't know how much I appreciate that. And I even talked to you at lunch after we had only been talking for an hour or two about coming on the show way back then.
Well, Murph, the reason they didn't consider you a security risk is they knew at your age they could tell you something and 5 minutes later you'd forget it. They weren't worried about it.
Rogeana, who is this guy keeps interrupting me? What's his name?
I don't know his name. I don't know. He has great hair, though.
And good skin, too.
Good skin.
Must be the Mary Kay.
I just love it that we've got you on here. And this episode is a little bit different than a lot of the interviews we do here. And our neighbors, I mean, our listeners, our regular listeners know I love DEA. I bleed DEA, but we're not perfect.
Well,
we're far from perfect.
But you know what you've exposed is that look, we've always said, and I've always said, it's even when I was state and local, because there was always this thing between the feds and state and local, and it's gotten so much better. But I said it's never the agents; it's usually the agency.
Right.
We never had problems in the field working people.
Yeah.
Nobody cared who put out the press release. Nobody cared who got credit. We all lived for the bus. We all lived for the thrill of making the arrest, closing the case, right? And so I don't think but I think, but to Murph's credit too, is that it's hard to go back and when it's even your own agency to say, hey, look, there's some things we did good and there's some things we didn't do so good. And this was an area where they didn't do so good in terms of how they treated you. And it's pretty clear. It's like, you turn down. And the other thing too, is the position never should have been offered to you. This is just my opinion. It never should have been offered to you unless it was a setup to say they knew you were going to turn it down and used it. Or on the other hand, it's like, why uproot somebody from their life and make them move for just a lateral? It's not going to improve your skill set. You've already well-rounded, right? So what's the purpose of doing it except for what I call it's an insidious form of punishment, but it's that under the radar to where they ask you to do something because they know you're going to turn it down. And then the culture is, well, hey, she turned this down. We can't promote her. That when we talked to Michelle Linhart, that was one of her challenges too. She was she left stuff in boxes because she knew that she had to take promotions and take moves to be able to move up, the ranks. And so I'm sorry that it happened to you, but you know what? What I will tell people to listen to this episode, especially this is one that every young girl ought to listen to. Every young girl of color ought to listen to. Every young boy ought to listen to. Every young boy of color ought to listen to. In other words, everybody ought to listen to it. If you want a master class in how to not let this stuff stop you, and instead, how do you overcome it? What's the mindset you need to have? But the biggest thing you've shown is you were willing to put in the time and make the sacrifice. You just didn't whine about it. You didn't use, I never heard you once say, I'm going to use my race as a way to I've never heard you say that. You know what I said? You know what you did is you doubled down. You worked harder. You learned what you needed to do to get ahead. And I tell you, no matter what race, what color, what creed, whatever you are, if more people had your attitude, we'd have a lot more people doing a lot better things, especially in this profession, of law enforcement. So, I mean, like Steve said, this is not a regular episode, but we're going to use this as a masterclass of how to overcome adversity. Speaking of that, because it leads into kind of like MTV, where are they now? So what are you doing now? So eventually you did. We know you punched out a DEA because we talked about it, right? But what was that decision, and what are you doing now? You talked about community. What occupies your day other than spending 4 hours on the podcast with
It's
me
been
and
4
Murph?
hours? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. We talked a lot. Okay. How do y'all gonna narrow this down? Oh,
We
okay.
don't.
Anyway, let
Two
me not.
episodes.
We cut it in two. Part 1 comes out on Monday. Part 2 comes out on Thursday. We don't edit your stuff other than, a hiccup or maybe a bathroom flush or something, but that's not in there.
Okay. So, yeah, I finally just decided it was time. And like I say, I was happier about being engaged in the community. So I pulled the plug at the December of last year, at the end of December. And what am I doing now? I am active in my church. My church just made my husband and I deacons. So we got a lot. We're going there. I'm still engaged in a lot of nonprofits related to kids. So I do like speaking engagements, and I'm going to be doing a camp, Girl Scout camp. It's law enforcement and firefighters come together to do a camp. I'm, I'll be in Olathe School next week. Excuse me, not next week, in March, doing a panel with their students, and I'm just trying to give back to the community, as well as I go down to it's called the Spot, which is like a center that's open to Olathe high school and middle school students. On Tuesdays, I go down there and hang out with them, and they're getting to know me more now, because I was doing it while I was on the job volunteering there, but I can only come like it's on Tuesday. So if I had a meeting, I wasn't able to come. So now I'm on a more regular schedule, and they're like more like opening and bringing me into the fold. So yeah, and yeah, I'm just trying to stay active in the community and give back. My husband and I just closed on a duplex, so I'm also a landlord now of a property. So yeah, and I feel like I want to just get into public speaking and encouraging people. I want to be able to go out and equip, empower, and encourage people that they can do anything.
You spent how many years total in law enforcement?
23 plus. Oh, total with Dallas?
Oh, yeah.
27 plus.
27 years of your life serving the public. And now it's time to kick back and enjoy life. And let's see, I think I just heard you're still serving the public.
Yeah. That's all I know how to do. Never stop.
Well, you know what I like to say is just because we retire does not mean that our oaths ever expire.
The only thing that's expired in Murphy's house is the milk. I've seen it because he doesn't get up off the couch. And
no, last night the chicken salad was expired.
Chicken salad was expired.
No.
Hey, Gina, Roro, my girl, I want you to tell Murph, what do you think of the Kansas Highway Patrol and the state troopers in Kansas?
I love them. I love
nanny,
them.
Nanny, boo-boo, Murph. Nanny, boo-boo.
If I tell you, so I wrote our guys up because we have a highway interdiction group. The Kansas Highway Interdiction Group is a task force group with us. And I wrote them up last year for the HIDA Award, and they got it, not just for local, they got the National HIDA Award for interdiction. Nice. If I tell you, they kill it. They will travel. They'll make a control delivery happen. If they'll call me in, I'll be like, we own it. Call the next division. Let's make it happen. They will say no to nothing, and they will get in their cars and they will take that dope, and we will get those bad guys arrested.
And I mean, they became so much more progressive once they got rid of Morgan.
Hey, by the way, let me tell you something. Do you know who was on the original pilot team for the Kansas Highway Patrol interdiction team? You know who was one of the 4 pilot troopers that started the program?
It had to be you if you're mentioning it.
Yeah.
Fucking A.
Mr. Good hair and good skin.
and I looked good in the uniform. That Sam Brown, the campaign hat. Damn Skippy.
Was it Tommy Bahama?
Actually, I actually spoke. I came in 2020 and 2020. My years and stuff are running together. But I spoke at their graduation, their cadet graduation in 2021.
Wow.
Yes.
So Chris,
that's pretty cool.
A buddy of mine, Chris Bauer, is in charge of the Patrol Academy. So you would have run into Chris Bauer, and you probably ran into Herman Jones, the colonel.
Yes. Yes.
So let me tell you a quick story about Herman Jones. Back when Herman was a trooper, he, as you talk about being interviewed, so Herman, was being interviewed, and they just had a big chase, big thing go down, and Herman's sitting there. being interviewed by the local news station down there in Wichita, because that's where he started off as a road trooper. And the guy they arrested slipped his cuffs, hopped behind the wheel of Herman's car, and on live TV took off in his patrol car.
Are you serious? What?
Yep.
Oh my! Well, he's getting ready to retire.
July.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So I might have to tell that story if I get invited to his retirement.
Do not tell him who it came from. I still have family in Kansas. I want to be able to travel back. Just tell him, hey, Herman, is it true you've lost a lot of things over the years? Not weight, but a car.
Look, he came to my retirement. I'm going to show you because I have one. I know you guys can't see it, but I have one.
Oh, I see that.
2 certificates from them for appreciation. For
Look at that.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Awesome.
So,
look, and if you can see behind me, you see what's on the wall there?
Yep, I see it.
That is. There was a guy that takes the trooper badges, so it's my radio number on there, 150, and actually makes a 3D kind of in wood with the badge and stuff. So that's wood. It's about 1.5 inches thick, and he's carved it out and painted it, and it's just beautiful. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. There you go, Murph.
I need one of those, Steve. The racks, though. I have all these coins and nowhere to display them. I was thinking about giving them away.
I bought these from the DEA museum. These 3 on the wall.
Gotcha,
and I've got one. There's one that's an American flag made by Flags of Valor, which I'm a big fan of them. I've got 3 of their flags, wooden flags, and it's got the thin blue line.
Yeah, the one you have up there. I have that one. It's on the other side of my shelf here. KHP got me that. KHP got me that. So I have the exact same one, and they have scriptures written on it that they put on there for me.
And Murph, I don't want to hear you talk smack about troopers again. Did you hear what she just said? I'm going to replay this. Every time you say that, I'm going to have that on an audio clip that I replay. I love the Kansas Highway Patrol and their troopers.
Well, I understand that once you were gone.
And I'm going to give out a shout out to Doug Carr. Doug Carr is the lieutenant over. Yes.
Doug was a police officer with me in Garden City, Kansas. His son just graduated from DEA.
Not just graduated. Derek graduated number 1, so he came back. He's here.
And for our listeners, when you graduate number 1 in the DEA Academy, you get to pick your post of preference. You get to pick where you go.
Yes.
What a small world. So Doug was a little old street officer when I was there in Garden City.
Yep. So if you want his number, I got it, because me and Doug had some really good conversations.
Everybody gives you their number. It's obvious, yes.
Well, when a woman walks in the room with a brick in her hand, what are you going to do, right?
Except I know one guy. She says everybody's giving me the number except one.
Except for this very unattractive guy. He didn't have good hair or good skin.
The dude went down. He went to jail. So be warned. So
there you go.
Well, hey, look, I got to tell you. Like I said, this 4 hours, 13 minutes and 59 seconds as we speak right now has flown by. But I tell you, I get goosebumps because you were talking about Kansas. We had only one student in our school was black, Doris Richardson. And to this day, we connected on Facebook. She went into the Army. To your point, I never saw, and I moved around the world. I was attuned to seeing different cultures, grew up in Iran, places like that. I never once saw, I may have missed it, but I never once saw with her in our school, anybody ever say anything bad, do stuff like that. And it warms the heart to know it's, people say, where are you from? I said, well, let me describe it this way. I'm a God-fearing, right-wing, rifle-carrying Christian farmer from Kansas,
Yes, I love it.
I know. But seriously, those, you talk about good people that just give you the shirt off their back. And
Kansas is a hidden gem. And I hope people don't come moving here. But I say that because
people in California stay there. Do not move to Kansas.
Because I can tell when I'm driving, I'm like, oh, they got to be from California or New York. Because at one point, people were coming, they were selling their houses and coming here buying cash and just, because they drive different. So I'm like, that person's from California. They're not from Kansas or from New York. But when my husband and I were sick with COVID, if I tell you our neighbors, they brought us food. They cut our grass. I was just like, who does this?
That's what
Kansans do this.
Kansas.
Supposed to be.
Yeah.
Boy, there is an ad. I'm cutting this out and sending it to the Kansas tourism and making them mint off of this. This is my retirement plan, Murph. I'm going to copyright this and send it to him. Say, here's your ad for Kansas.
Yeah, but then everybody's going to move to Kansas, and Regina's going to show up with a brick in her hand.
And she'll kick my
exactly.
ass.
And I like a throat punch too. Even though I've never throat punched anybody, I visualize throat punching a lot. No.
Well, that's certainly a way to bring this podcast to an end.
I'm sorry.
We end up with, I'm a Christian. I do, and I want to throat punch somebody.
I don't. Not just people that are bad people.
Only people who deserve it. That's right.
That's right. Exactly right.
All right.
This has been a hoot. Regina, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. I'm sorry I changed the dynamics of your show, but I hope it's beneficial.
It was intentional. You know why? And it was because you're unique in terms of guests we've had. I mean, you've checked a lot of boxes for us. No,
you know, when I sent Morgan a note, I included in that note, we have to tell her story.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to do. That's what we wanted to get out here. And that's why we spent so much time.
Later we'll bring you back. We'll talk about some of the cases you work. We kind of hit on that, but I think the first thing people got to do is understand what you went through, what you overcame. And the thing was, you were going to go blog. This podcast would have been an hour shorter, except for the fact is we dived into your background, and your background informed so much about what makes you who you are today.
Absolutely.
And why you do.
Absolutely.
So, hey, this is us. People can't see it, but this is us saluting you, saying, job well done, Bat Patterson, before it was Bat Patterson. And do you say just Patterson-King, or do you say Patterson-King?
I say Patterson-King, and please say Patterson-King, because my husband gets so annoyed when we go some places and they be like, yes, Mr. Patterson.
You gotta love it.
So please say Rogeana Patterson-King. And actually, I think I may drop the Patterson now that I'm retired, because the only reason I really kept it is because my dad has no sons, first. And then second is because I felt like if I dropped Patterson, I would get lost in the DEA email system. Outlook would just lose me because they'd be searching for Rogeana Patterson, and I would no longer be there.
Rogeana King, yeah.
You're right.
Exactly. So I kept it. I was like, babe, I'm sorry. He was like, okay. But now I'm retired.
Cool
He's kind of pushing, like, you keeping that? I'm like, do you know how hard it is to change a name?
You and Brian have an open invitation anytime you want to come through Orlando.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, lady.
All right. Well, you guys have heard an excellent story. Don't go anywhere. Everyone else, stay tuned for the debrief. Steve, as we've done with many other guests, they try to gloss past stuff. And that's kind of I would say that's my trademark. I go, whoa, whoa, whoa.
It is.
Let's roll back a little bit. And when we dived into her backstory, the reason she wanted to become a cop goes back to her being in third grade, goes back to her growing up. Mm-hmm. And I mean, just what she went through with her dad, what she went through even with her mom later, when her mom did some things, put loans in her name and stuff, defaults, repos. I mean, for that to happen and for her to be able to not just survive, but thrive and achieve, I'm telling you, anybody with young kids who want to know what it takes to make your way in this world and get ahead, this ought to be mandatory. Like our episode with Natasha Herzig on child sex, on human sex trafficking, prevent that. This ought to be required for kids to listen to say, you want to understand. Here's somebody who could have used their background and the way they grew up as an excuse, and they didn't. And the other thing she didn't use as an excuse, she never once injected race into our conversations when we were talking about stuff.
And would have none of it.
None of it.
As you guys know, we see each other on videos. We're recording these, but we only tape record the audio portion. And when you mentioned that, she just started almost violently shaking her head. No, I'd never use the race card. Just the ultimate respect for this is a true success story. It's reminiscent of Sherry Foster's story, of Tracy Walder's story, and with the problems she had at the FBI Academy. It's a shame. I just hate to think that this is an anti-female type thing that is still going on. I mean, for Rogeana, this was 20-something years ago. But
Murph, and when you said earlier, again, we're loyal to the profession, and I know you're loyal to DEA. But the one person I'd like to go back and just find out what the fuck was their problem was the guy who took her weapon and screwed with her sights at the academy.
You're not kidding. Especially, I mean, you heard me tell my story when I'd been shooting competition when I joined DEA. And so the first day on the range, they treat you like you've never held a gun. And that's the right way to do it. And so we just slow fire from 7-yard line or 5-yard line. I could make one hole with 6 rounds. And we were shooting revolvers back then. And the instructor comes running up and he says, you get credit for 1 round Like, what the hell are you talking about? There's 6 rounds in there. He said, I know there are, but I can't see the holes. If I can't see the hole, you don't get credit. So then I start spreading them out on the paper. And
well,
then
Murph, your problem was you turned it into a smiley face, and that pissed your instructor off.
Well, I had to go write a memo while I was being a smartass. But anyway, that has nothing to do with it's a shame what Rogeana went through. Thank God she's strong in her faith, strong in her belief. She's obviously very happy with her husband. I mean, the citizens of the United States lost a true American patriot asset when Rogeana retired. And it's pretty much because
she got
what
passed
you heard
over.
her story.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, but the biggest takeaway for me, Murph, is she loves Kansas State Troopers.
And that was post Morgan.
Who do you think blazed the trail for others to follow?
Well, somebody had to go get the coffee and donuts.
Yeah, okay. Well, hey guys, but seriously, have your kids listen to this. This is one of our best episodes, I think, simply because there was stuff around it, like her being the youngest agent really to like write a Title III and run stuff like that. But it's, no matter what you threw at her, she overcame it. No matter what you threw at her, she overcame it. And she got to a point where it's not that she gave up, but she says, look, I think my talents are best suited in my community and to do stuff. And she moved on to do that. So this is us saluting her, saying we wish you well in that.
Absolutely. And, she exhibited leadership qualities through her entire career. Just loved it. Thank you so much.
And she was humble enough to know when she was kind of being a pain in the ass. And she said, what's going on here? And they can't, had her other agents and other people said, hey, look. Mm-hmm. And she was humble enough to go seek guidance and get feedback and change, how she was. So that's a sign of a true leader too. Somebody who's willing to listen and make changes. So
absolutely.
This is us saluting you. So if you guys like that episode, and I think you would, head on over to Apple Podcasts, hit those 5 stars, go to Spotify, hit the 5 stars as well. Let us know what you think about it. Leave some comments, drop some comments in there. Head on over to gameofcrimespodcast.com for more info about the show. We'll put pictures and stuff there. Follow us on that thing they call social media. It's an internet sensation, at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. But make sure you check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Like I said, we just finished our latest installment, the finale episode, 2 hours, the Real DEA Narcos on the Real DEA Narcos Cali edition, the takedown of the Cali cartel. And I got to tell you, seriously, Murph, giving you and JP props for what you guys did and how these guys followed on. Imagine 4 people. Really, you had a lot of other help, right? But basically, you two led that. Dave and Chris led that. 4 people take down 2 major cartels.
Yep, that's what you get in law enforcement. There are so many dedicated professionals. We don't take credit. There's nothing special about us. I've been around and tell everybody we're small town country boys. We got to work a really big case. It kind of got blown out of proportion by a show called Narcos, but it's an example of the professionalism that you see every day in the law enforcement culture. It's just that you just don't hear about it, and that's why we have Game of Crime, so you can hear about these folks.
Well, thank God it got blown out of proportion, because if I understand, you're going on your 8th year of the speaking tour of.
That's unbelievable. I'm not complaining. Believe me, we don't want to get back.
And you've got a lot of stuff lined up already for this year. You and I were talking down in Orlando. You got like another 15 things lined up for this year already.
Already, and it's like when it rains.
And it's only February.
I know it. I know it. No complaints here.
All right. Well, no complaints either from me. So, hey guys, like I said, make sure you check out this episode. Share it with your friends. Tell one, share one. And look, once again, we thank you guys. You are our players. We thank you guys once again for playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the Kansas Trooper, hi-ya friendly Game of Crimes.